En el momento en que Sofía Orreas los oyó reír, supo que su vida estaba a punto de partirse en dos. A través de la rendija de la puerta del comedor, vio a Dominique Varela, el hombre cuya palabra podía acabar con carreras, relaciones y vidas, recostarse en su silla y sonreír ante algo vil. Apostaban por ella a si una criada podría sobrevivir una noche entre la élite de la ciudad. Si se quebraría bajo el peso de su ridículo. La horca estaba en 3 semanas. Ya habían elegido su humillación, como si escogieran un vino. Pero lo que no sabían, lo que ninguno de ellos podía saber, era que Sofía Reyes había dejado de quebrarse hacía mucho tiempo. Antes de que escuches lo que pasó después, hazme un favor. Deja un comentario con la ciudad desde la que estás viendo esto. Quiero ver hasta dónde llega esta historia. Y si te quedas hasta el final, verás por qué esta noche lo cambió todo. Dale al botón de me gusta y comencemos. La mansión Varela no se sentía como un hogar. Se sentía como un museo dedicado a la religión del dinero. Fríos suelos de mármol que resonaban con cada paso. Lámparas de araña que costaban más de lo que la mayoría de la gente ganaba en una década. Cuadros cuyo valor se comentaba más a menudo que su belleza. Sofía llevaba 2 años trabajando allí, y en todo ese tiempo había perfeccionado el arte de ser invisible. Se movía por las habitaciones como humo, limpiando lo que ya estaba limpio, ordenando lo que ya estaba ordenado. La familia no la notaba. El personal apenas la reconocía. Ella lo prefería así. La invisibilidad era seguridad. La invisibilidad era supervivencia. Pero esa noche, la invisibilidad le falló. Estaba recogiendo vasos del estudio cuando oyó la voz de Dominique que llegaba desde el comedor. Normalmente, se habría marchado inmediatamente. Se suponía que el personal no debía quedarse cerca de conversaciones privadas. Pero algo en su tono la hizo detenerse. Había una ligereza que rara vez oía, casi juguetona. Dominique Varela no era juguetón. Vamos, Dom, me estás diciendo que nunca lo has pensado. Aaron Marqueschan, uno de los amigos más antiguos de Dominique, un capitalista de riesgo con demasiado dinero y muy poca conciencia. ¿Pensar en qué? La voz de Dominique tenía ese peligroso matiz de aburrimiento. Siempre estaba aburrido. Ya nada le emocionaba. Llevar a uno de ellos, ya sabes, a la gala de primavera. Márquez se rió y Sofía oyó el tintineo del hielo en un vaso solo para ver qué pasaba. Las caras de todos. ¿Uno de quién? Otra voz ahora. Víctor Santos, un concejal que llevaba años en la nómina de Dominique. El empleado, el sirviente. Imagina entrar con tu criada del brazo. El escándalo sería legendario. La mano de Sofía se congeló en la bandeja que sostenía. Eso es estúpido, dijo Dominique. Pero no había convicción en ello. Lo es. Tú eres el que siempre dice que la gala es aburrida. La misma gente, la misma conversación, todo igual. Esto lo sacudiría. Márquez se estaba entusiasmando con su propia idea. Además, sabes que los Harrison se volverían locos después de lo que Eleanor dijo sobre tu última cita. Eleanor Harrison puede irse al infierno. Exacto. Así que demuéstralo. Aparece con alguien completamente inesperado. Alguien que no pertenece. Alguien que hará que todos esos buitres de la alta sociedad se atraganten con su champán. Hubo una pausa. Sofía sabía que debía irse. Debía marcharse ahora mismo antes de oír algo que no pudiera olvidar. Pero sus pies no se movían. ¿De verdad estás considerando esto?, dijo Víctor con un tono divertido y horrorizado a partes iguales. No estoy considerando nada, dijo Dominique. Pero Sofía llevaba trabajando en esta casa el tiempo suficiente para saber cuándo mentía. Podía oírlo en el ligero cambio de tono. En la forma en que sus palabras salían un poco demasiado rápido. ¿Y esa?, preguntó Márquez de nuevo. La callada. Sofía, ¿verdad? Su pelo oscuro siempre parece que está resolviendo una ecuación matemática en su cabeza. La sangre de Sofía se convirtió en agua helada. Sofía, repitió Dominique, y ella oyó una sorpresa genuina en su voz, como si se hubiera olvidado de que existía hasta ese preciso momento. Sí, es inteligente. Se nota con solo mirarla. Probablemente se desperdicia limpiando inodoros. Pero ese no es nuestro problema. El punto es que es lo suficientemente guapa como para que la gente no piense que estás haciendo una declaración sobre bajar los estándares, solo romper las reglas. Esto es una locura, dijo Víctor. Pero se estaba riendo. Es perfecto, replicó Marcus. Piénsalo, Dom, entras con tu criada. Todos susurran. La cabeza de Eleanor explota. Pasas la mejor noche que has tenido en una de esas cosas en años. Y luego el lunes por la mañana, todo vuelve a la normalidad. Ella vuelve a quitar el polvo de tus estanterías y tú vuelves a dirigir la ciudad. Diversión inofensiva. Inofensiva, repitió Dominique, saboreando la palabra. Sofía sintió algo frío y duro formándose en su pecho. Una piedra donde antes estaba su corazón. Lo haré interesante, dijo Marcus. Apuesto 5.000 a que no tienes las agallas para hacerlo. 5.000. Víctor silbó. Estoy dentro. Otras 5 a que se acobarda antes de que termine la semana. Sois los dos idiotas, dijo Dominique. Caro Sofía notó el cambio en su voz. El reto lo había enganchado. Dominique Varela no se echaba atrás ante los retos, por muy estúpidos que fueran. Así que, lo harás. Hubo una pausa que pareció durar horas. Sofía estaba en el pasillo, con la bandeja en las manos, apenas respirando. Sí, dijo finalmente Dominique. Sí, ¿por qué no? Podría ser divertido. La risa que siguió era de esas que sueltan los hombres cuando creen que son listos, cuando creen que se van a salir con la suya. Sofía dejó la bandeja sobre la mesa más cercana con manos temblorosas, con cuidado de no hacer ruido. Luego se alejó, sus zapatos silenciosos sobre el suelo de mármol, con el rostro cuidadosamente inexpresivo. No volvió a la cocina. En cambio, fue al pequeño baño contiguo a las habitaciones del servicio y cerró la puerta con llave. Se quedó allí un largo rato, mirando su reflejo en el espejo. Ojos oscuros y un rostro pálido, el pelo recogido en el mismo moño sencillo que llevaba todos los días. El uniforme gris que la hacía parecer una más de las mujeres invisibles que limpiaban las casas de los ricos. Esperó a que le brotaran las lágrimas, a que le entrara la rabia, a que pasara algo. Lo que llegó en cambio fue claridad. Pensaban que era una broma, un accesorio, algo para sacar a relucir para entretener y volver a guardar en el armario cuando el juego terminara. Dominique Varela, el hombre que dirigía la ciudad desde las puertas cerradas, que hacía sudar a los políticos y temblar a los empresarios, iba a exhibirla frente a todos los que importaban como un chiste. $5.000. Eso era lo que valía su humillación para ellos. Sofía se miró a sí misma durante un largo momento, luego sonrió. No era una sonrisa feliz. Bien, susurró a su reflejo. Veamos cómo se desarrolla esto. A la mañana siguiente, Dominique la encontró en la biblioteca. Estaba quitando el polvo de los estantes, una tarea que nunca terminaba realmente porque Dominique seguía comprando libros que nunca leía. Escuchó a un mentor, pero no se giró. Mantuvo sus movimientos firmes, su respiración constante. Sofía. Ahora se giró, con el rostro expuesto en la misma cortés inexpresividad de siempre. Sí, señor Varela. Parecía incómodo. Bien. Dominique Varela, con su traje a medida que costaba más de lo que ella había hecho en 6 meses, se movía inquieto como un adolescente nervioso. Ella esperó. Tengo una propuesta para ti, dijo finalmente. Una propuesta, señor. La gala de primavera. Es un evento benéfico en 3 semanas, muy exclusivo. Me gustaría que asistieras como mi invitada. Sofía mantuvo una expresión neutral, pero su mente iba a 1000 por hora. Así que, de verdad iba a hacerlo. Una parte de ella había esperado que despertara esa mañana y se diera cuenta de lo cruel que era todo aquello, pero no. Allí estaba él pidiéndole que participara en su propia humillación. ¿Puedo preguntar por qué, señor? La pregunta pareció sorprenderlo. Probablemente esperaba una aceptación inmediata, gratitud, incluso la pobre criada, tan honrada de ser notada. ¿Importa? Preguntó, con un toque de irritación en la voz. Sí, dijo ella simplemente. Se miraron fijamente. Sofía lo observó calcular, tratando de averiguar qué respuesta le daría lo que quería. Podía ver la mentira formándose antes de que la pronunciara. Creo que te vendría bien. Exponerte a ese mundo podría abrirte puertas. ¿Puertas a qué exactamente? Oportunidades para establecer contactos. Claramente eres inteligente. Demasiado inteligente para estar quitando el polvo de los libros para siempre. Y sin embargo, aquí estoy, señor, quitando el polvo de sus libros. Su mandíbula se tensó. No estaba acostumbrado a que lo desafiaran, especialmente no la empleada. Es una oferta generosa, Sofía. Es una oferta inusual, corrigió ella, lo que me hace preguntarme sobre la motivación detrás de ella. Por un momento, pensó que podría despedirla. Sus ojos se volvieron fríos de esa manera que ella había visto antes. Cuando los socios comerciales presionaban demasiado o pedían demasiado. Pero entonces algo cambió en su expresión. Curiosidad tal vez, o sorpresa de que ella no estuviera desempeñando el papel que él esperaba. ¿Importa? Preguntó de nuevo, pero esta vez sonó como una pregunta genuina. Sofía dejó su trapo para el polvo. Se giró para mirarlo de frente, con las manos cruzadas frente a ella. Cuando habló, su voz era tranquila y clara. Iré con una condición. ¿Estás negociando? Casi se echó a reír. Sí, señor. ¿Cuál es la condición? Que financie un programa de alfabetización en el centro comunitario de la Quinta Calle. Llevan 2 años intentando recaudar fondos para ampliar sus clases de educación para adultos. Financiación completa durante 3 años, libros, profesores, espacio, todo lo que necesitan. Dominique la miró fijamente. Eso costaría menos de lo que gastaste en el cuadro del pasillo este, lo interrumpió ella. El que compraste el mes pasado y que no has vuelto a mirar desde entonces. Se quedó callado un buen rato. Ella lo vio reevaluando, recalculando. No se suponía que supiera cuánto gastaba en arte. No se suponía que prestara atención a nada más allá de sus tareas asignadas. ¿Por qué te importa un programa de alfabetización?, preguntó. Porque solía ser voluntaria allí antes de tener que dejar la escuela para cuidar de mi madre, antes de terminar aquí quitando el polvo a tus libros. Mantuvo la voz firme y objetiva. Me ayudaron. Me gustaría que ayudaran a otros. Y si digo que no, entonces rechazo tu propuesta y puedes buscar a otra persona con quien entretener a tus amigos. Su expresión se quedó muy inmóvil. ¿Qué dijiste? Maldita sea. Había revelado sus intenciones demasiado claramente, pero ya era demasiado tarde para retractarse. Sé por qué me lo preguntas, señor Varela. No soy estúpida ni ingenua, pero si vas a usarme para el juego que estés jugando, entonces voy a. Algo que importa. Algo que dura más de una noche. El silencio que siguió fue peligroso. Había cruzado una línea. Quizás varias líneas. Esperó la explosión, que él le dijera que hiciera las maletas y se fuera. En cambio, se rió. No fue una risa cruel. Fue de sorpresa, casi respetuosa. Bien, dijo. Financiaré tu programa. 3 años de apoyo total. Lo quiero por escrito. Por supuesto. Sacó su teléfono, escribió algo rápidamente. Mi abogado tendrá los documentos listos para mañana. Puedes revisarlos antes de firmar. Gracias, señor. Deja de llamarme señor. Si vas a ser mi acompañante en la gala, probablemente deberíamos tutearnos, al menos en privado. Como desees, Dominique. Se estremeció ligeramente al oír su nombre en su boca. Se preguntó si alguien, aparte de su madre, lo había llamado alguna vez simplemente Dominique sin el señor, sin el título, sin el temor. Necesitaremos conseguirte algo de ropa, dijo. Tendré que mi asistente se encargará de conseguir un estilista. Eso no será necesario. Yo me encargaré. Sofía, esto no es. Necesitas entender qué es este evento. El costo, lo entiendo perfectamente, y me encargaré yo misma. Otra mirada larga. Luego asintió lentamente. Muy bien, como quieras. Después de que se fue, Sofía se permitió apoyarse en la estantería. Le temblaban las manos. Acababa de negociar con Dominique Varela y había ganado, al menos en parte. Pensó en las 3 semanas que tenía para prepararse. Creían que sería su entretenimiento, su cuento de advertencia, la criada que pensaba que podía jugar a disfrazarse con la élite. No tenían ni idea de con quién estaban tratando realmente. Esa noche, después de terminar su turno, Sofía tomó el autobús a la biblioteca pública. Era tarde, pero tenía una llave, un privilegio de sus días de voluntaria que nadie se había molestado en revocar. Entró en la sección de investigación y abrió su computadora portátil, la gala de primavera. Empezó con lo básico. Llevaba celebrándose 47 años. Originalmente iniciada por la familia Vandermeer como una muestra de su nueva colección de arte. Con el tiempo, se había convertido en el evento social de la temporada. Un lugar donde el dinero viejo se mezclaba con el nuevo poder, donde los tratos eran un evento que giraba en torno al champán, donde la reputación se forjaba o se destruía según con quién hablabas y cómo te veías al hacerlo. La gala del año pasado recaudó $3 millones para la educación artística. Sofía se preguntaba cuánto de ese dinero realmente llegaba a las escuelas en comparación con los gastos administrativos y generales. Buscó fotos de eventos anteriores. Mujeres con vestidos que costaban más que un coche, hombres con smokines probablemente hechos a medida. Todos bellos, todos impecables, todos pertenecientes a un mundo con las puertas cerradas a cal y canto. Estudió la lista de invitados del año pasado. Reconoció algunos nombres de las noticias, senadores, directores ejecutivos de empresas tecnológicas, familias adineradas de antaño que habían sido ricas desde tiempos inmemoriales. Tomó nota de los fotógrafos, los periodistas que cubrían eventos sociales. Leyó la cobertura, prestando atención a quién se mencionaba y por qué. Eleanor Harrison. Ese nombre surgió repetidamente en la conversación de Marcus. Sofía la encontró fácilmente en las fotos, rubia, de unos 40 años, con lo que su investigación le indicó que era un vestido vintage de Chanel. Casada con Harold Harrison, un promotor inmobiliario que había hecho fortuna demoliendo viviendas asequibles para construir mansiones de lujo. Condominios. Eleanor se movía en los mismos círculos que Dominique, formaba parte de las mismas juntas directivas de organizaciones benéficas, asistía a los mismos eventos exclusivos. Sofía encontró lo que buscaba en una columna de chismes de hacía 2 meses. Saltaron chispas en la gala benéfica de invierno cuando Eleanor Harrison hizo comentarios mordaces sobre la elección de acompañante de Dominique Varela. El jefe del crimen, conocido por su discreción, llegó con la experta en tecnología Samantha Wu, a quien Harrison supuestamente llamó dinero nuevo que se esfuerza demasiado. Wu se fue llorando. Varela se fue solo. Harrison parecía satisfecho. Así que esto tenía que ver en parte con Eleanor, con demostrar algo, con la venganza disfrazada de entretenimiento. Sofía cerró esa pestaña y abrió otra. Tenía 3 semanas. 3 semanas para prepararse para una noche en la que sería escrutada, juzgada y descartada, donde la gente estaría esperando su fracaso. Pensó en lo que Dominique le había ofrecido, un estilista, ayuda profesional, todo arreglado para ella, transformándola en la imagen que se ajustara a sus propósitos. No, si iba a hacer esto, lo haría a su manera, en sus propios términos. Empezó una nueva búsqueda, no para vestidos, estilistas o tutoriales de maquillaje. En cambio, buscaba algo completamente distinto. La psicología de la dinámica de poder en entornos sociales, como dominar una sala, la diferencia entre confianza y arrogancia, las sutiles señales del lenguaje corporal que comunicaban estatus. Había sido invisible durante 2 años. Por elección, sí, pero también por necesidad. Había aprendido a ser pequeña, a no ocupar espacio, a moverse por el mundo sin llamar la atención. Esa mujer no sobreviviría a la gala. Ni siquiera lograría cruzar la entrada sin ser objeto de burlas. Así que tendría que convertirse en otra persona. No una versión falsa, no una chica rica fingiendo jugar a disfrazarse. Algo diferente. Algo real. Alguien que recordara quién había sido antes de que la vida la acorralara y la obligara a elegir la supervivencia por encima de los sueños. Sofía Reyes antes de convertirse en la criada invisible. Sofía Reyes, que había sido una estudiante becada de literatura y filosofía en la Universidad de Santa Catalina, que estaba a punto de graduarse con honores, a quien sus profesores le habían dicho que tenía un don para el análisis, para ver patrones que otros pasaron por alto, que habían amado a P. Austen y Baldwin, que podían discutir sobre la estructura narrativa durante horas, que una vez creyeron que podían enseñar, escribir, importar. Que Sofía había desaparecido cuando su madre enfermó, cuando las facturas médicas comenzaron a acumularse más rápido que la esperanza, cuando tuvo que elegir entre su educación y el cuidado de su madre. En realidad no había sido una elección, pero que Sofía, la que lo había leído todo, la que pensaba profundamente sobre el significado y el propósito en la forma en que las historias moldeaban la realidad, seguía ahí, enterrada bajo 2 años de mantener la cabeza gacha y la boca cerrada. Bajo el peso del agotamiento y el trabajo invisible, las luces fluorescentes de la biblioteca zumbaban sobre su cabeza. La pantalla de la computadora portátil de Sofía brillaba en la oscuridad. Tenía 3 semanas para desenterrarse, para recordar cómo volver a ser visible. Abrió un nuevo documento y comenzó a escribir. No un plan, no una estrategia, solo pensamientos, recuerdos, pedazos de sí misma que había encerrado. Pronto llegaría el momento de pensar en vestidos, apariencias y todas las cosas superficiales que personas como Eleanor Harrison usaban como armas. Pero primero, necesitaba recordar quién era debajo de todo eso. Porque si iba a sobrevivir a esto, no sería fingiendo ser una de ellos. Sería siendo tan completamente ella misma que no tuvieran más remedio que verla. La noticia del acuerdo se extendió entre el personal de la mansión en 48 horas. Sofía sintió el cambio de inmediato. La forma en que la conversación se detenía cuando entraba en la cocina. Las miradas de reojo de las otras amas de casa. La cuidadosa distancia que María mantenía mientras servía el almuerzo. Solo Carmen, la cocinera principal que había estado con la familia Varela durante 20 años, dijo algo directamente. ¿Sabes lo que estás haciendo?, preguntó una tarde mientras Sofía tomaba su descanso en la cocina. No, admitió Sofía. Pero lo estoy haciendo de todos modos. Carmen la estudió con ojos oscuros y perspicaces. Trabajé para su padre, ya sabes, antes de Dominique. Otro hombre, peor hombre. Le sirvió café a Sofía sin preguntar. Dominique actúa como si fuera diferente, mejor, pero sigue siendo hijo de su padre. Lo sé. De verdad. Carmen se apoyó en la encimera. Porque he visto chicas como tú antes. Chicas listas que creen que pueden con hombres como él. Que creen entender el juego. Y he visto lo que pasa cuando se dan cuenta de que estaban equivocadas. Esto no es así, dijo Sofía. ¿Verdad? Sofía rodeó la taza de café con las manos. Estaba caliente, de verdad, sólida. Me está usando para algún tipo de juego de poder, venganza social, lo que sea. Lo sé. Pero yo también estoy sacando algo de esto, un programa de alfabetización totalmente financiado que vale la pena una noche incómoda. Si eso es todo, dijo Carmen en voz baja. Una noche. Pero estas cosas tienden a convertirse en algo más de lo que empiezan, y puedo con ello. Carmen no discutió, solo le dio una palmadita en el hombro a Sofía y volvió a cocinar. Pero la advertencia persistió. Esa noche, Sofía encontró el contrato en su cama. 3 años de financiación para el programa de alfabetización para adultos del Centro Comunitario de la Quinta Calle, firmado por Dominique y su abogado, con testigos y notariado. Legal, vinculante, real. Lo leyó 3 veces, buscando resquicios, maneras de retirarse o reducir el compromiso. No encontró nada. Fue directo, generoso, incluso más de lo que ella había pedido en algunos aspectos. El presupuesto incluía dinero para tecnología, para materiales actualizados, para programas de divulgación. Firmó su nombre al pie, Sofía María Reyes, con la letra cuidada que su madre le había enseñado. La letra que decía, la educación importa. La presentación importa. Importas. A la mañana siguiente, dejó el contrato firmado en el escritorio de Dominique. No esperó confirmación, simplemente volvió al trabajo, desempolvando la biblioteca, lavando las ventanas, manteniendo su invisibilidad mientras su mente trabajaba en otras cosas. Tenía 2 semanas y media. Empezó a caminar diferente. Al principio fue sutil, simplemente enderezando la columna por completo en lugar de esa ligera joroba que había desarrollado por intentar ser pequeña, levantando la barbilla en lugar de mantener la mirada baja, ocupando todo su espacio en lugar de deslizarse por las paredes. Algunos empleados lo notaron. Vio a Ricardo, uno de los jardineros, observándola con curiosidad mientras pasaba junto a los jardines. Vio los ojos de María entrecerrarse ligeramente cuando Sofía la miró directamente en lugar de apartar la vista. También empezó a hablar diferente. Seguía siendo educada, seguía siendo profesional, pero sin la diferencia excesiva. Cuando la ama de llaves principal le pidió que se quedara hasta tarde en su día libre, Sofía dijo, no, simplemente, claramente, sin disculpas ni largas explicaciones. Simplemente no. Tengo planes. El ama de llaves parpadeó, sobresaltada. Perdón. Tengo planes para ese día. Con gusto me quedaré hasta tarde mañana si necesitas que te cubra, pero no en mi día libre programado. Esto es muy inusual, Sofía. Sí, asintió Sofía. Pero también es mi derecho. Según el contrato de trabajo que firmé, vio el cálculo en los ojos de la mujer. La comprensión de que despedir a alguien justo antes de que se suponía que debía asistir a un evento importante con el jefe parecería sospechoso, generaría preguntas. Bien, dijo la ama de llaves con firmeza. Mañana entonces, encantada de ayudar, dijo Sofía, y lo decía en serio. No estaba tratando de ser difícil, solo trataba de recordar cómo establecer límites. En su día libre, fue a la universidad, su antigua universidad, la que había dejado 3 semestres antes de graduarse. Caminó por el campus como un fantasma, visitando su propio pasado, viendo la biblioteca donde había pasado incontables horas, el patio donde había debatido filosofía con otros estudiantes, el edificio que albergaba el departamento de inglés. Casi no entró, casi se dio la vuelta y se fue. Pero había llegado hasta aquí. La profesora Martínez estaba en su oficina rodeada del mismo caos de libros y Sofía recordó los papeles. Levantó la vista cuando Sofía llamó a la puerta y por un momento no la reconoció. Luego su rostro se iluminó. Sofía, Dios mío, ¿cuánto tiempo ha pasado? Casi 2 años. Entra. Entra. Siéntate. Cuéntame todo. ¿Cómo está tu madre? Falleció hace 6 meses. El rostro del profesor Martínez se ensombreció. Oh, cariño. Lo siento mucho. Gracias. Fue un final tranquilo. Sofía se acomodó en la silla familiar frente al escritorio del profesor. Quería preguntarle algo. Sé que ha pasado tiempo, pero cree que aún podría terminar mi carrera. Por supuesto. Tus créditos siguen siendo válidos. Tendrías que volver a matricularte, terminar las clases que te faltan, escribir tu tesis. Es absolutamente posible. Abrió algo en su computadora. Te faltaban 3 semestres. Con una buena planificación, podrías terminar en 1 año, año y medio. No puedo pagar un tiempo completo. Tendría que trabajar. Muchos estudiantes trabajan. Tenemos clases nocturnas, opciones en línea. No sería fácil, pero Sofía, fuiste una de mis mejores alumnas. Odié verte marchar. Si quieres volver, encontraremos la manera. Hablaron durante una hora sobre cursos, horarios, ayuda financiera, sobre la tesis que Sofía había empezado a planear antes de irse, un análisis de la dinámica del poder en la literatura victoriana. Como los personajes que parecían impotentes en realidad moldeaban las narrativas a través de una sutil resistencia. Eso sigue siendo relevante, dijo el profesor Martínez. Más que nunca, tal vez si la terminas, me sentiría honrado de asesorarte. Cuando Sofía dejó el campus, algo se había movido en su pecho. Una puerta que creía cerrada para siempre se había abierto. Solo una rendija. El futuro se veía diferente a cómo se veía esa mañana. Le quedaban 11 días. Dominique la encontró leyendo en la biblioteca una tarde. Había terminado su trabajo temprano y se permitió el lujo de coger uno de sus libros sin leer, una colección de ensayos sobre arte y significado. ¿Te gusta ese?, preguntó desde la puerta. Ella levantó la vista, sobresaltada. Pensó que no estaba. Lo siento, puedo devolverlo. Te pregunté si te gustaba eso, no si tenías permiso para leerlo. Por eso compro libros, para que se puedan leer. Entonces, ¿por qué no los lees? La pregunta salió antes de que ella pudiera detenerla. Pero en lugar de enojarse, sonrió levemente. Buena pregunta. Supongo que los compro porque me gusta la idea de ser alguien que lee. La realidad requiere más paciencia de la que tengo. Entró en la biblioteca, se sirvió whisky del carrito de bar y le ofreció uno. Ella negó con la cabeza. Trabajo mañana, dijo. Son las 5. Todavía trabajo por la mañana. Se sentó en una de las sillas de cuero observándola. Has cambiado. Yo. Eres diferente a como eras hace 3 semanas. Más. Hizo un gesto vago. Presente. Siempre estuve presente, Dominique. Simplemente no estabas prestando atención. Eso debería haberlo enfadado. Ella pudo verlo considerarlo, decidiendo si ofenderse. Entonces se rió. Tienes razón. No lo estaba. Tomó un sorbo de whisky. La gala es en 10 días. Mi asistente quiere saber sobre la estilista. Está ansiosa. Dile que no se preocupe. Lo tengo controlado. Sofía, esto no es algo que puedas manejar así como así. Esta gente te destrozará si apareces con el vestido equivocado, los zapatos equivocados. Sé exactamente lo que harán. Ella interrumpió. No soy tonta. ¿Recuerdas? Tú misma lo dijiste. Lo suficientemente inteligente como para estar desperdiciando tu energía quitando el polvo de los libros. Tuvo la gracia de parecer incómodo. Lo dije como un cumplido. ¿En serio? Sí, lo dije. Ella le creyó, por extraño que parezca. Dominique era muchas cosas. Despiadado, calculador, peligroso, pero no era un mentiroso. Al menos no sobre cosas pequeñas. ¿Por qué aceptaste?, preguntó ella. Para financiar el programa. Podrías haber dicho que no. Encontrar a otra persona para lo que sea esto. Porque pediste algo que importaba en lugar de algo para ti. Eso es raro. En mi mundo, todos quieren algo para sí mismos. Poder, dinero, contactos. Tú querías ayudar a desconocidos a aprender a leer. Entonces, me estás recompensando por ser diferente. Tal vez. O tal vez solo tengo curiosidad por ver qué pasa cuando entras en esa habitación. ¿Quieres decir? ¿Tienes curiosidad por ver si te avergonzaré? No. Se inclinó hacia adelante. Tengo curiosidad por ver si tú los avergonzarás a ellos. La honestidad en su voz la sorprendió. Ya no lo tomaba a broma. En algún momento de las últimas 3 semanas, se había convertido en otra cosa. ¿Qué te hizo cambiar de opinión? Preguntó ella. ¿Sobre qué? Sobre verme como entretenimiento. Te escuché esa noche. Tú, Marcus y Víctor, la apuesta, todo. Se quedó muy quieto. Estabas escuchando. Yo estaba trabajando. Tú estabas hablando. Las paredes no son tan gruesas. Cerró el libro. Déjalo a un lado. No estoy enojado. Bueno, lo estaba, pero ya no, porque si no hubieras tenido esa estúpida conversación, nunca me habrías notado y nunca habría conseguido la financiación del programa. Así que, en cierto modo, tu crueldad accidentalmente hizo algo bueno. No intentaba ser cruel. No, estaba siendo irreflexivo, lo cual es peor en algunos sentidos. La crueldad requiere conciencia. Simplemente no me viste como real. El silencio que siguió fue pesado. Ella lo observó procesarlo, darle vueltas, examinarlo desde todos los ángulos. Finalmente, asintió. Tienes razón. Lo siento. 2 palabras. Sencillo. Pero ella sintió el peso detrás de ellas. Gracias, dijo. Para lo que valga, ya no lo veo como una broma. Y me aseguraré de que todos allí sepan que eres mi invitado. En realidad, mi invitado, no una declaración ni un accesorio ni lo que sea que pensé que iba a hacer esto. Lo aprecio, pero no importará. ¿Qué quieres decir? Pensarán lo que tengan que pensar independientemente de lo que digas. He hecho las paces con eso. La pregunta es si he hecho las paces conmigo misma. Se puso de pie, alisó su uniforme. Su conversación había terminado, aunque él aún no se diera cuenta. ¿Lo has hecho? Preguntó. ¿Hiciste las paces contigo misma? Sofía sonrió. Pregúntame en 10 días. Con una semana restante, Sofía finalmente se ocupó del vestido. No fue a las boutiques que el asistente de Dominique le había sugerido. No reservó citas en lugares donde el sueldo de un año podría alcanzar para arreglar un dobladillo. En cambio, fue al trastero donde guardaba las cosas de su madre. Tardó 1 hora buscando entre cajas para encontrarlo. La funda estaba polvorienta, amarillenta por el paso del tiempo. Dentro estaba el vestido de novia de su madre de 1995. Seda color crema, líneas sencillas, elegante sin ser ostentoso. Su madre lo había usado una vez y luego lo guardó para una hija que tal vez lo quisiera algún día. Sofía se lo llevó a su pequeño apartamento, el que aún conservaba, aunque podría haber vivido en la mansión. Pasó todo el fin de semana con él extendido sobre la mesa de la cocina, examinando cuidadosamente cada costura, cada línea. El estilo estaba pasado de moda, el color no encajaba con los gustos modernos, pero la estructura, la calidad de la tela, eso era atemporal. Encontró una costurera en su barrio, una mujer mayor que hacía arreglos en su sala de estar. La señora Chen examinó el vestido con manos expertas. Buena seda, dijo. Seda auténtica. Ya no la hacen así. ¿Quieres que lo actualice? Quiero que lo transformes, dijo Sofía. Conserva la tela, conserva la estructura, pero hazlo nuevo. Hazlo mío. Trabajaron juntas durante los siguientes días. La señora Chen tenía un ojo para el diseño que Sofía no esperaba. Juntas, deconstruyeron el vestido, eliminaron los detalles anticuados, reestructuraron el corpiño, crearon líneas limpias y modernas, conservando la integridad del original. El color crema no servía. Apagaba a Sofía. Pero la señora Chen conocía a una tintorera especializada en telas naturales. Se decidieron por un azul medianoche intenso, el color del cielo justo después del atardecer. Esto llevará tiempo, advirtió la señora Chen. El teñido, la reconstrucción. Cuando lo necesitas. En 5 días. 5 días. La señora Chen negó con la cabeza. Imposible. Pagaré extra. Lo que necesites. La señora Chen la miró. De verdad. La miró. Esto es importante para ti. Sí. ¿Por qué? Sofía podría haber mentido. Podría haber dicho que era solo una fiesta, solo un vestido. Pero los ojos de la señora Chen eran perspicaces, pacientes. Porque necesito recordar quién soy, dijo Sofía simplemente. Y este vestido de mi madre me hizo nuevo. Eso se siente bien. La señora Chen asintió lentamente. Vuelve en 4 días. 3 días antes de esta gala, Dominique llamó a Sofía a su estudio. Necesitamos hablar de logística, dijo. El evento comienza a las 8. Te recogeré a las 7:30. ¿Dónde debo enviar el coche? Te veré allí. Sofía, eso no es te veré allí, repitió con firmeza. Llegaré a las 8:15, no contigo sola. Frunció el ceño. ¿Por qué? Porque si llego contigo, soy tu accesorio. Si llego sola, soy tu igual. Hay una diferencia. La cuestión es que estemos juntos. La cuestión era que querías cambiar las cosas. Hacer una declaración. Te estoy dando una mejor. Ella lo miró a los ojos. Créeme, esto no es lo que acordamos. Acordamos que asistiría como tu invitada. Acordamos que financiarías el programa. No acordamos los horarios de llegada. Se suavizó un poco. Por favor, déjame hacer esto mi way. Studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. 8:15, don't be late. Y won't they be? As she turned to leave, he called after her. Sofía, I know I keep saying this, but are you sure you know what you're walking into? She paused at the door. No, but I'm walking into it anyway. 2 days before the gala, the dress was ready. When Sofía picked it up from Mrs. Chen's apartment, she barely recognized it. The midnight blue silk caught the light, shimmering without being flashy. The lines were clean, modern, elegant. It looked expensive without trying to. It looked real. You try it on, Mrs. Chen insisted. In Mrs. Chen's bathroom. Sofía slipped into the dress. It fit perfectly. Mrs. Chen had insisted on multiple fittings, getting every measurement exact. Sofía looked at herself in the small mirror. She looked like herself, not like someone trying to be something else, not like an imitation of wealth, just herself, if herself had been allowed to bloom instead of being pruned back by necessity. Will, Mrs. Chen called from outside. Sofía opened the door. Mrs. Chen smiled, her eyes crinkling. Good. Very good. You show them. Show them what? That you don't need their approval to matter. Look. The night before the gala, Sofía couldn't sleep. She lay in her small apartment staring at the ceiling, thinking about what was coming. In less than 24 hours, she'd walk into a room full of people who'd spent their lives learning how to exclude others, who'd perfected the art of the cutting remark, the dismissive glance, the subtle cruelty. She thought about backing out, about calling Dominic and saying she'd changed her mind, about staying invisible, staying safe. But she'd already signed the contract. The program was funded. And more than that, she'd already changed. She could feel it in how she carried herself, how she spoke, how she moved through the world. Going back to being invisible would be like trying to stuff herself back into a box that no longer fit. Around 3 in the morning, she got up and went to her bookshelf, found her old copy of Jane Eyre, the one from her first year at university, opened to a passage she'd underlined years ago. I am no bird and no net ensnares me. I am a free human being with an independent will. She'd forgotten about that line, about why it had mattered to her once. Tomorrow night, she'd remember. She slept for a few hours, dreamless and deep. When she woke, sunlight was streaming through her window. The day of the gala had arrived. She went through her morning routine with careful precision, showered, dried her hair, laid out everything she'd need for that evening. The dress hanging on her closet door. The shoes she'd found at a consignment shop. Elegant heels that didn't scream designer but didn't apologize for existing either. Simple jewelry that had been her mother's. At noon, her phone rang. Dominique. Hey, he said, and she could hear tension in his voice. Just checking in, you're still coming, right? Yes. Good. Good. Y look, I know I've been weird about this whole thing. But I want you to know I've got your back tonight. If anyone says anything, Dominique, she interrupted gently. I appreciate that, but I need to handle this myself. Whatever happens, let me handle it. That's what I'm afraid of. Why? Because I'm starting to realize I have no idea what you're planning. She smiled. Good. Sofia, I'll see you at 8:15. She hung up before he could argue. The rest of the afternoon passed in a strange haze. She ate lunch without tasting it, read a book without absorbing it, tried to calm the nervous energy building in her chest. At 6, she started getting ready. She took her time with everything, styled her hair simply, down, natural waves, nothing trying too hard, minimal makeup, just enough to look polished, not enough to look like someone else. The dress slipped on like water, settled on her like it had been made for this exact moment. When she was fully ready, she looked at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone she recognized. Not the Sofia who'd spent those years being invisible. Not the Sofia who'd been a scholarship student struggling to survive. But all the Sofia she'd ever been combined into one person who was done apologizing for existing. She called a car not Dominic's driver, just a regular ride service. Got the address for the venue, the Grand Asherton Hotel, where the spring gala had been held for decades. At 8:10, she stood outside the hotel, watching black cars pull up, watching beautiful people emerge and disappear into the golden light beyond the doors. She took a deep breath. Then she walked forward toward whatever was waiting. The lobby of the Grand Asherton was exactly what Sofia expected. Marble columns, crystal chandeliers dripping lead like expensive rain, waiters circulating with champagne that probably cost more per glass than her weekly grocery budget, women in gowns that whispered against the floor. Men in tuxedos so perfectly tailored they looked like uniforms for a club that would never let her join. She stood at the entrance for a moment, taking it in, not intimidated, just observing, making mental notes about the geography of power in this room. Who stood where, who talked to whom, the invisible hierarchies that organize these people like iron filings around a magnet. A photographer near the entrance spotted her, raised his camera reflexively, then lowered it when he realized he didn't recognize her. Not worth the film. She wasn't anybody yet. She moved forward and the crowd parted without realizing they were doing it. That was the first test passed. The dress worked. MRS, Chen had been right about the color, about the lines. Sofia didn't look like she was trying to compete. She looked like she had nothing to prove. Near the bar, she spotted Marcus Chen first. He was talking to a couple in their 60s, laughing at something the men said. He hadn't seen her yet. Good. Let him be surprised. She accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, more as camouflage than anything else. Took a sip. It tasted like money and poor decisions. You look lost, Sofia turned. The woman addressing her was maybe 50, wearing diamonds that could probably pay off a small country's debt. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Just arrived, Sofia said evenly. I don't think we've been met. I'm Catherine Vandermeer. My family hosts this little gathering. Little gathering, right. Sofia recognized the name. Old money, the kind that predated most people's grandparents. Catherine Vandermeer wasn't just rich. She was institutional. Sofia Reyes, she said, extending her hand. Catherine's handshake was brief, assessing. Reyes, I don't know that family. You wouldn't. We're not from around here. Where are you from, dear? The condescension in that dear was surgical. Sofia smiled. The East Side, born and raised. Catherine's eyebrows lifted fractionally. The East Side was code for everything this room wasn't. Working class, immigrant families, people who rode buses instead of being driven. How interesting. And what brings you to our event? I'm here with Dominic Varela. That got a reaction. Catherine's expression shifted from polite dismissal to sharp interest. Dominique, of course. Where is he? Not sure. We arrived separately. How, mother? Catherine's tone suggested it was anything but a compliment. Well, enjoy yourself, dear. The silent auction is in the West Gallery if you're interested. Though I'm not sure, she paused delicately. What your price range might be. She glided away before Sophia could respond. Fierce blood drawn. Sophia took another sip of champagne and reminded herself that this was exactly what she'd expected. Across the room, she finally spotted Dominic. He was surrounded by a cluster of men in tuxedos, all talking at once, competing for his attention. He looked bored. Then he glanced toward the entrance, probably checking for her, and went still. Their eyes met across the crowd. Sophia raised her champagne glass slightly. A small acknowledgement, nothing more. He excused himself from the group and started toward her, but before he could cross the room, Eleanor Harrison intercepted him. Sophia recognized her from the photos. Blonde hair and an elaborate updo, wearing a gown that screamed designer label. Eleanor put her hand on Dominic's arm, leaned in close to say something, laughed at her own joke. Dominic's response was polite, but distant. He was trying to extract himself, but Eleanor wasn't making it easy. First time at one of these. Sophia turned to find a man about her age, maybe slightly older, standing beside her. He had kind eyes and a slightly rumpled tuxedo that suggested he was as uncomfortable in formal wear as she was. That obvious? She asked. Only because you're the only person here who looks like they're actually paying attention. He extended his hand. David Park reporter. He covered these things for the Metropolitan. Sofia Reyes. You here with someone or just brave? She smiled despite herself. Judy is still out on which one it is. Well, for what it's worth, you're already causing a stir. Catherine Vandermeer doesn't usually talk to people she doesn't know, and she definitely doesn't look that flustered afterward. He flustered her. You're an unknown variable. These people hate unknown variables. David sipped his drink. So, who are you really, because you're clearly not? He gestured vaguely at the room. Ueme, one of them. Does it matter? Probably not. But I'm curious. It's an occupational hazard. Before she could answer, Victor Santos materialized beside them. He looked different than he had at Dominic's dinner. Less relaxed, more politician. His smile was practiced. Miss Reyes, he said smoothly. Victor Santos. I don't believe we've been formally introduced. Sophia kept her expression neutral. Haven't we? Something flickered in his eyes. Uncertainty. He couldn't quite remember if they'd met, and that bothered him. I'm a city councilman. I work with Dominic on various civic initiatives. How public-spirited of you, Sophia said. Victor's smile tightened. You're here with Dominic, I understand. News travels fast. It always does, especially when it's unexpected. He was trying to figure her out. Recalibrate. How do you two know each other? This was the moment. The question everyone would ask, everyone would want answer. Sophia could lie, could shade the truth, could try to make herself sound more acceptable. Instead, she told the truth. I work for him. I'm his housemaid. Clear's throat, the silence that followed was beautiful. Victor's practiced smile froze. David Park choked slightly on his drink. Nearby, a woman in a red gown who'd clearly been eavesdropping turned to stare. I'm sorry, Victor said as if he'd misheard. His house and mate. He cleaned his house, dust his books, that sort of thing. You're joking. No, why would I joke about that? Victor looked around, clearly hoping this was some kind of prank. When he realized it wasn't, his expression went through several rapid changes. Confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looked like anger. Does Dominic know you're telling people this? I assume so. It's not a secret. It's my job. Your job is. Victor stopped himself, clearly trying to recalculate his approach. This is highly irregular. So, I've been told. I don't think you understand what you've walked into here, Donna. Sofia met his eyes directly. This is a charity gala for arts education. People paying large sums of money to feel good about themselves while drinking expensive champagne and making business deals. Seems pretty straightforward. Victor's jaw tightened. You should be careful, Miss Reyes. These people aren't kind to outsiders. Ooh, then it's lucky I'm not looking for kindness. He stared at her for a long moment, then walked away without another word. David Park whistled low. Well, that was something, he said. You actually work for Dominic Varela. I actually do. And you just told Victor Santos, who is one of the biggest social clamors in this city, that you're a housemaid. Seemed relevant. David laughed. Actually laughed. You know what? I like you. You're either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and I haven't figured out which yet. Can it be both? Usually is. He pulled out a business card. If you survive tonight and ever want to tell your side of whatever story this turns into, call me. He promised to be fair. She took the card, slipped it into the small clutch she'd brought. Thanks. Don't thank me yet. The sharks are circling. He was right. Sofia could feel the attention now, the way conversations were shifting. People glancing her direction and then quickly away. The news was spreading. The housemaid. Dominique's housemaid. At the spring gala. Dominique finally managed to extract himself from Eleanor and made his way to Sofia. His expression was carefully controlled, but she could see tension in his shoulders. You told Victor you're my maid, he said quietly. I told him the truth. He was going to we could have said you were a consultant or a business associate. Something that wouldn't what? Embarrass you. Make this harder for you. She studied his face. He actually looked concerned. Not for himself, but for her. Dominique, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to be here as myself, not as some sanitized version that makes these people comfortable. That was never the deal. I know, but he stopped, shook his head. You're right. You're absolutely right. I just didn't expect you to lead with it. Would you prefer I lied? I did prefer you to be safe. The word hung between them. Safe. As if she'd ever been safe in any space she'd occupied. As if safety was something she could afford to prioritize. Too late for that, she said. A woman in a silver gown approached, her smile sharp. Dominic, darling, you must introduce me to your friend. Sofia, this is Margaret Chan. Margaret. Sofia Reyes. Chen. Sofia asked. Are you related to Marcus? My husband, unfortunately. Margaret's smile didn't waver, though I try not to hold that against myself. I hear you work for Dominic. That's right. How refreshing. Most of the women he brings to these things are trying desperately to marry him. At least you have realistic expectations. The insult was delivered with such practiced sweetness that it took a moment to land. Dominique stiffened beside her. Margaret, it's fine. Sofia interrupted. She turned to Margaret with a calm smile. You're right. I do have realistic expectations. I expect people to show their true character eventually, and they rarely disappoint. Margaret's smile froze. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Another woman joined them. This one older, wearing emeralds. Is this her? The maid everyone's talking about. Her name is Sofia, Dominic said tightly. Of course, of course. No offense intended, dear. The woman looked Sofia up and down like she was evaluating livestock. That's a lovely dress. Is it vintage? It was my mother's wedding dress. He had it altered. How sentimental. The word dripped with disdain. Most people rent for these occasions or buy off the rack if budget is a concern. Budget wasn't the concern, Sofia said. Meaning was how poetic. The woman turned to Dominic. Where did you find her? C'est quite articulate. For don't finish that sentence, Dominic said, and his voice had gone cold. I'm serious, Linda. Don't. Linda blinked, startled. He was simply going to say. I know what you were going to say, and if you want to keep your seat on the hospital board, you'll think of something else to talk about. The threat was delivered quietly, almost casually, but Linda went pale. She mumbled an excuse and fled. You didn't have to do that, Sophia said. Yes, I did. That was about to get ugly. It's already ugly. That's the point, isn't it? You brought me here to make things uncomfortable. Congratulations. Mission accomplished. She walked away before he could respond, heading toward the gallery where the silent auction was set up. She needed a moment, just a moment to breathe and remember why she was doing this. The gallery was quieter, fewer people. Paintings lined the walls. Modern art that Sophia suspected was expensive because it was incomprehensible. She stopped in front of a canvas that was just blue. Different shades of blue, but still just blue. Rothko, a voice said beside her. Color field painting. These ones probably worth about $2 million. Sophia glanced over. The speaker was a man in his 30s, wearing a tuxedo that fit like it had been made for him. He had dark hair and an easy smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. The $2 million for blue paint, she said. It's not about the paint. It's about the meaning, the emotion, what it makes you feel. What does it make you feel? I considered. Honestly, like I'm at a party where people spend $2 million on blue paint. Despite everything, Sophia laughed. Fair answer. I'm Andrew. Andrew Vandermeer. Related to Catherine. Unfortunately, she's my mother. I said it with the weariness of someone who'd been explaining his family for years. You're Sophia, the housemaid who's causing all the drama. Is that what I'm doing? According to my mother, you're single-handedly destroying the social order. According to everyone else, you're the most interesting thing to happen at one of these in years. I studied here. Can I ask you something? You're going to anyway. Why did you come? You had to know it would be like this. Sophia looked back at the painting. $2 million worth of blue. Because I was tired of being invisible, she said finally. And because someone offered me a chance to be visible, even if it meant walking into a room full of people who hate me for it. They don't hate you, don't they? No, they're threatened by you. There is a difference. Andrew leaned against the wall. See, everyone here knows their place, knows the rules. You're breaking rules they didn't even know could be broken. That's terrifying to them. Good. Ismail. Yeah, but. I pushed off the wall. For what it's worth, I hope you make it through the night. We could use more people like you in this world. People like me. People who give a damn about something other than themselves. He walked away, leaving Sophia alone with the expensive blue painting. She stared at it for a while longer, trying to see what $2 million of meaning looked like. All she saw was blue. When she returned to the main ballroom, dinner was being announced. She found her seat at Dominic's table. Of course, she was at his table. The seating arrangement alone was probably causing heart palpitations among the event organizers. The table included Marcus Chen and his wife Margaret, Victor Santos, and his wife Amanda, a tech CEO named Richard something, and Eleanor Harrison with her husband Harold. Everyone was already seated except Eleanor, who arrived a moment after Sophia, clearly timing her entrance. Eleanor's eyes went wide when she saw Sophia in the chair next to Dominic's. Oh, she said, her voice carrying across the table. I didn't realize we were doing assigned seating for everyone. Everyone who was invited. Yes, Dominic said coolly. Eleanor slid into her seat, her smile tight. Of course. How inclusive. She turned to Sophia with exaggerated interest. So, Sophia, was it? Tell us about yourself. What do you do? I work for Dominic. Yes, so I heard. In what capacity? Here it was again. The moment of truth over and over. I'm his housemaid. Harold Harrison choked on his water. Richard the tech. Seus eyebrows shot up. Amanda Santos looked like she wanted to disappear under the table. Only Marcus seemed unsurprised. Had known this was coming. Had helped engineer it. Eleanor's smile could have cut glass. How enterprising of you. Eve always admired people who work with their hands. Have you? Sophia asked mildly. Oh, yes. There's such dignity and honest labor. So few people appreciate that anymore. Eleanor sipped her wine. Though I must say, I'm surprised Dominic brought staff to a social event. That's rather unconventional. I didn't bring staff, Dominic said. He brought a guest. Of course, my mistake. Eleanor turned back to Sophia. And how are you finding the evening so far? I imagine this must all be quite overwhelming for you. It's interesting, Sophia said. Interesting. How diplomatic. Eleanor leaned forward conspiratorially. You must tell me where you got that dress. It's so unique. It was my mother's. Oh. Eleanor sat back, her smile never wavering. Well, how sentimental, though perhaps next time you might consider something more contemporary. The vintage look can be so hit or miss. I like it, Margaret Chin said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Margaret rarely spoke at these events, usually content to let Marcus hold court, but now she was looking at Sophia with something that might have been respect. The dress, Margaret continued. It's beautiful, and the fact that it belonged to your mother, that it means something, that's worth more than anything you could buy in a store. Eleanor's expression went frigid. How sweet of you to say, Margaret, though I suppose not everyone has your bohemian sensibilities. Bohemian, Marcus repeated, and there was an edge in his voice. Is that what we're calling good taste now? The tension at the table could have been cut with a knife. Sophia realized that something was happening here, some dynamic she didn't fully understand. Margaret and Eleanor clearly had history. And Marcus, who'd been in on the original joke, was now defending his wife's defense of Sophia. People were complicated. Loyalties shifted. Nothing was as simple as it seemed. Dinner was served. Some kind of fish that probably cost more per plate than Sophia made in a week. She ate carefully, aware that everyone at the table was watching her, waiting for her to use the wrong fork or commit some other unforgivable breach of etiquette. But Sophia's mother had been a stickler for manners, had insisted that knowing how to conduct herself at a formal dinner was a form of armor, a way of moving through worlds that didn't want you. Sophia knew which fork to use, knew how to pace herself through courses, knew how to hold a wine glass and when to drink. She saw Eleanor's disappointment when no social gaffes materialized. So Sophia, Victor's wife, Amanda, said, clearly trying to change the subject. Do you have family in the city? Not anymore. My mother passed away 6 months ago. Oh, I'm so sorry. And your father? Never knew him. Amanda looked uncomfortable, clearly regretting the question. That must have been difficult. It was what it was. And you didn't have other family, siblings? Used me and my mother. Eleanor seized on this. So, you've been entirely on your own since she passed. How frightening that must be. No safety net, no support system. I can't imagine. Can't you? Sophia met her eyes. You would think everyone here understands being alone. You just hide it better behind money and social connections. The table went quiet. That's quite a philosophical statement, Eleanor said coolly. Though I'm not sure it applies to those of us who've built actual communities and relationships. As opposed to what? People who've bought their way into communities, who maintain relationships only as long as they're useful. Sophia, Dominic said quietly. No, Eleanor said, her smile sharp. Let her speak. I'm fascinated by this perspective. Please, Sophia, tell us more about the emptiness of our lives. You clearly have insights we're all missing. Sophia took a sip of water, considering she could back down now. Could apologize, could retreat into silence and let the moment pass, or she could double down. I wasn't talking about emptiness, she said. I was talking about loneliness. There is a difference. You can be surrounded by people and still be lonely. In fact, I'd argue that's the most common kind of loneliness. The kind where you're in a room full of people who know your name and your net worth and your social standing, but don't actually know you. And you think you know us. Harold Harrison spoke for the first time, his voice hard. I think I see you more clearly than you see yourselves. Based on what? A few hours at a party. Based on 2 years of being invisible in spaces like this. Of watching how people behave when they think no one's paying attention. Of listening to conversations that happen when the help is in the room. Marcus went very still. I knew she'd heard. The help is always in the room, Sophia continued softly. We're always listening. We're always watching. You just never notice because noticing would require acknowledging that we're people, that we have thoughts and opinions and the ability to judge you the same way you judge us. This is incredibly inappropriate, Alolena said, but her voice lacked its earlier confidence. Is it? I thought we were having a conversation about honesty and community, about what's real and what's performance. Sophia set down her fork. But if you'd prefer, we can go back to small talk. I can tell you about the weather or compliment your dress or ask vapid questions about your vacation home. Whatever makes you comfortable. Dominique was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear, but Margaret was smiling. Actually smiling. I think I like you, Margaret said. Margaret. Marcus said sharply. What? She's right. Everything she said is right. We do perform. We do hide behind money and connections. We do maintain relationships only as long as they're useful. And we absolutely don't notice the people who keep our lives running because that would require seeing them as equals. This is absurd, Eleanor said. We're being lectured on morality by a woman who does furniture for a living. Better than making a living by tearing people down, Margaret shot back. Excuse me. You heard me. You spend your entire life making other people feel small so you can feel big. At least Sophia's work produces something tangible. What do you produce besides gossip and cruelty? Eleanor's face went red. How dare you? Ladies, Richard the tech CEO interrupted. Perhaps we should let them finish, Dominic said. I'm finding this more interesting than most conversations I have at these things. Eleanor stood abruptly. I won't sit here and be insulted. Then don't, Margaret said calmly. No one's forcing you to stay. For a moment it seemed like Eleanor might actually leave, but that would be admitting defeat. Instead, she sat back down, her posture rigid, her expression murderous. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable silence. When the plates were cleared and people began to drift away from tables, Sophia excused herself. She needed air. Needed to be away from the weight of all those stares, all that judgment. She found a balcony off the main ballroom, empty except for the night air and the city lights below. She stood at the railing, breathing deep, trying to process what had just happened. She'd come here expecting to be dismissed, to be patronized, to be treated like a curiosity. She hadn't expected to fight back. Hadn't they expected Margaret Chin to defend her? Hadn't they expected any of this to feel so raw and real? That was quite a performance in there. Sophia didn't turn. She recognized Dominic's voice. Wasn't they performing? No. I came to stand beside her at the railing. Could have fooled me. You eviscerated Eleanor Harrison in front of half the social register. She started it. She absolutely did. And you finished it. It was quiet for a moment. You know this is going to follow you, right? What you said in there, people won't forget. Good. Good. I meant what I said. I love it. If they hate me for telling the truth, that's their problem. Dominique laughed low and surprised. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? Someone easier to control. Someone who'd play the role I needed. Someone who'd be grateful for the opportunity and wouldn't make waves. Sorry to disappoint. You didn't disappoint. Man, he turned to face her. You were right. What you said about loneliness, about being in a room full of people who know your name but not you, that was accurate. Speaking from experience, always. I looked out at the city. I built my entire life around being untouchable, irreachable. And somewhere along the way, I forgot how to let anyone in, how to be anything other than the role. So, what changed? You did. Watching you these past few weeks, watching you reclaim yourself. It made me realize how much of myself I'd given away, how much I'd let this world take from me. Sophia didn't know what to say to that. This version of Dominic, vulnerable, honest, was so different from the man who'd agreed to parade her as a joke. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For how this started, for treating you like a prop, for not seeing you until you forced me to. You already apologized. I know, but I don't think I fully understood what I was apologizing for until tonight. Until I watched you walk into that room and refuse to be anything other than exactly who you are. They stood in silence for a while, the sounds of the party muted behind them. They're probably talking about us right now, Sophia said. Definitely. Does that bother you? Not even a little bit, he smiled. For the first time in years, I don't care what they think. That might be the most honest thing you've ever said to me. Yeah, it might be. The balcony door opened and David Park stuck his head out. Sorry to interrupt, but you two should probably come back inside. Eleanor Harrison is giving an interview to someone from Society Weekly, and I'm pretty sure she's about to say something nuclear. Dominique and Sophia exchanged glances. Should we care? Sophia asked. Probably not, Dominic said. But it might be entertaining to watch. They went back inside. Eleanor was holding court near the main staircase, surrounded by a small crowd that had gathered like vultures sensing blood. The reporter from Society Weekly, a thin woman with severe glasses and a digital recorder, was nodding along as Eleanor spoke, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes bright with the kind of interest that spelled trouble. I'm simply saying that standards exist for a reason, Eleanor was saying as Sophia and Dominic approached. These events have a certain decorum, a certain expectation of behavior. When someone comes in and deliberately disrupts that, it reflects poorly on everyone involved. Are you referring to anyone specific? The reporter asked, though her eyes had already found Sophia in the crowd. He wouldn't want to name names. That would be crass. But I think we all know what I'm talking about. Eleanor's smile was poisonous. There's a difference between being inclusive and being desperate for attention, between breaking barriers and breaking basic social contracts. Social contracts, Sophia repeated, stepping forward before Dominic could stop her. The crowd parted slightly, creating a clear sideline between her and Eleanor. What exactly is the social contract you're referring to? Eleanor's eyes glittered. She'd been hoping for this confrontation. The understanding that certain spaces require certain qualifications, that you can't simply walk into a room and demand to be taken seriously without having earned that right. And how does one earn that right? By being born into the right family, by marrying into money, by spending decades perfecting the art of making other people feel inferior. The reporter's recorder was running. Sophia could see the red light blinking, capturing every word. Part of her knew she should stop, should walk away before this became permanent. But a larger part didn't care anymore. eBay earned my place through contribution, Alana said coldly. Through years of service to this community, through charitable work, through writing checks, Sophia interrupted. You write checks and attend parties and call it contribution. But tell me, Eleanor, when was the last time you actually did anything? When was the last time you created something, built something, helped someone without a photographer present? How dare you question my charitable work? I'm not questioning your charitable work. I'm questioning whether writing a tax-deductible check while wearing a gun that costs more than most people make in a year actually counts as charity or if it's just another form of performance. The crowd had grown. Sophia could see faces she recognized from dinner from the earlier conversations. Catherine Vandermeer had materialized at the edge of the group, her expression unreadable. Andrew was there too, watching with frank interest. "You have no idea what you're talking about," Eleanor said, but her voice had lost some of its confidence. "You've been in this world for what, a few hours? And you think you understand how it works? You've been cleaning up after this world for those years. You've seen the mess you people leave behind when you think no one's watching. I've seen the waste, the excess, the casual cruelty disguised as sophistication. So, yeah, I think I understand exactly how it works. Then why are you here?" Eleanor's voice went sharp. "If we're all so terrible, if this world is so corrupt, why did you accept Dominic's invitation? Why dress up and come to our party and eat our food and drink our champagne?" It was a fair question, maybe the fairest question anyone had asked all night. Sophia took a breath. When she spoke, her voice was quieter, but somehow it carried further than Eleanor's outrage. "Because I wanted to see if I was right about all of you, about what this world actually is beneath the polish and the pretense." She looked around at the faces watching her, and because someone offered me a chance to fund something that actually matters in exchange for one night of discomfort, a literacy program that will help people like me, people who had to choose between education and survival. So, I took the deal. Even knowing it would be like this. "How noble," Eleanor said sarcastically. "The martyr and designer's clothing. Oh, wait. That's your mother's altered wedding dress, isn't it? How very touching. At least it means something." Margaret Chen's voice cut through the crowd. She'd followed them from the balcony, and now she stepped forward to stand beside Sophia. "Unlike that Dior you're wearing that you'll donate to charity next month for another tax write-off." "Stay out of this, Margaret." Eleanor snapped. "Why?" "Because you only like it when people stay in their designated boxes. When wives stay quiet and housemaids stay invisible and no one questions the system that keeps you on top." Marcus appeared beside his wife, looking uncomfortable but not stopping her. Victor Santos was there too, his politician's smile frozen in place as he tried to gauge which way the wind was blowing. "This is absurd," Eleanor said. "You won't stand here and be lectured by who?" Sophia asked. "By someone beneath you, someone who doesn't belong, someone who reminds you that your position is arbitrary and your power is borrowed." "My position is earned. Your position is inherited. You were born into a family with money and connections. You married a man with more money and more connections, and you've spent your entire life mistaking that accident of birth for actual achievement." The silence that followed was absolute. Even the reporter had stopped moving, her recorder still running, but her professional detachment cracked by genuine shock. Eleanor's face had gone white. "You little careful," Dominic said softly, stepping forward for the first time. "Whatever you're about to say, think very carefully about whether you want it on record." Eleanor turned on him. "This is your fault. You brought her here. You unleashed this what?" Dominique asked. "This woman who refuses to play the game. This person who says what everyone else is thinking but too polite to speak. This is exactly what I brought her here for. To humillarme. To remind myself what honesty looks like." He turned to the crowd. "I love you. When was the last time anyone in this room said what they actually meant? When was the last time we had a real conversation instead of performing for each other?" "Dominique," Victor said carefully. "You're making a scene." "Good. Maybe we need more scenes. Maybe we need to stop pretending everything is fine while we rot from the inside out." Catherine Vandermeer moved forward and the crowd parted for her the way water parts for a ship. She looked at Sophia, then at Eleanor, then at Dominic. When she spoke, her voice carried absolute authority. "Eleanor, I think you should leave." Eleanor's mouth fell open. "What? You heard me. You've made your feelings clear. You've aired your grievances. Now you're being asked to leave. This is my event as much as yours." "No," Catherine said flatly. "It's my family's event, and I'm telling you to go. You can come back next year when you've remembered how to behave in public." "You can't be serious." "I'm entirely serious. You have 5 minutes before I have security escort you out. Eleanor looked around wildly, searching for support. Found none. Even her husband Harold had taken a step back, clearly unwilling to go down with her ship. This is because of her, Eleanor said, pointing at Sophia. Because some maid says a few clever things, and suddenly I'm the villain. You made yourself the villain the moment you decided to attack someone for the crime of existing in your space, Catherine said. Now go. Eleanor gathered what remained of her dignity and swept toward the exit, her husband trailing behind her. The crowd watched her go in silence. When the doors closed behind her, Catherine turned to Sophia. That was either very brave or very stupid, she said. I've been hearing that all night. I imagine you have. Catherine studied her for a long moment. You're not what I expected when I heard Dominic was bringing his housemaid. What did you expect? Someone easier to dismiss. Someone who would know her place and stay in it. Catherine's expression shifted. Became something almost like respect. I was wrong and I don't often admit that. What changed your mind? You did. By refusing to apologize for who you are, by standing in a room full of people who wanted you to fail and succeeding anyway. Catherine glanced at the reporter, who was still recording everything. Told you might want to be careful, this will be in every society column by morning. Let it be, Sophia said. You realize what this means. You will be infamous. People will have opinions. Some will admire you. Most will hate you. Your life will never be private again. My life was never private. I just wasn't paying attention to who was watching. Catherine smiled faintly. You're going to be trouble, aren't you? Probably. Good. We could use more trouble. She turned to address the crowd that was still hovering, waiting to see what would happen next. Well, the show's over. Go back to your champagne and your small talk. Try to remember that you actually came here to support arts education, not to watch social blood sport. The crowd dispersed slowly, people breaking off into smaller groups to dissect what they'd just witnessed. Sophia could hear the whispers starting, the hot takes being formulated. By morning, she'd be a story people told, the housemaid who stood up to Eleanor Harrison, the woman who crashed high society and refused to leave. She wondered if she'd regret this, if the cost of visibility would turn out to be higher than she'd anticipated. David Park appeared at her elbow, grinning. That was the best thing I've seen at one of these in 15 years. Please tell me I can quote you. Which part? I love it. Every single word. My editor is going to lose her mind. Go ahead. He meant what I said. He pulled out his notebook, started scribbling. Can I get a few follow-up questions for context now? Unless you're busy being the most talked about person at this party. Sophia glanced at Dominic, who shrugged, might as well. The magia is done anyway. They found a quiet corner away from the main crowd. David clicked his pen. Al professional now. So Sofia Reyes, age 24. Education, some colleges at Catherine's University had to leave before graduating. Why? My mother got sick. Someone had to take care of her. Someone had to pay the medical bills. I wrote that down. And you ended up working for Dominic Varela because I needed a job that paid enough to cover her care and he was hiring. Did you know who he was? What he does? Sophia hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Dominic's business dealings weren't exactly public knowledge. Weren't they exactly legal if the rumors were true? He knew he was wealthy and influential, she said carefully. I didn't ask too many questions. David studied here. A smart answer, diplomatic. I'm learning. What made you agree to come tonight? You had to know it would be difficult. I offered to fund a literacy program. 3 years of full support for the 5th Street Community Center. That was worth one night of discomfort. Used one night. That was the deal. And after tonight, what happens to you and Dominic? Sophia looked across the room to where Dominic was talking with Andrew Vandermeer and a couple of other men she didn't recognize. It looked different than he had that first night at his dinner table. Less remote, more present. I don't know, she said honestly. We didn't plan this far ahead. Do you want there to be an after tonight? It was a personal question, maybe too personal. But David's eyes were kind, genuinely curious rather than intrusive. I want to finish my degree, Sophia said. I want to work at the community center, help other people who fell through the cracks like I did. I want to build something that matters. Whether Dominic is part of that, we'll see. That's very measured. What do you want me to say? That I'm in love with him. That this is a fairy tale. I'm his employee, David. Tonight was an arrangement, not a romance. Was it? Because from where I'm standing, it looked like something more than an arrangement. Before Sophia could respond, someone tapped her shoulder. She turned to find a woman about her age wearing a simple black dress that somehow looked more expensive than anything else in the room. Sorry to interrupt, the woman said. I'm Jessica Wu. I just wanted to say thank you for what? For what you said to Eleanor. Someone needed to say it. I've been coming to these things for 3 years, and every time I do, she finds some way to make me feel like I don't belong. Like new money doesn't count. Like my family's success doesn't matter because we earned it instead of inheriting it. She said that to you. Not in those words, but the implication was clear. So, thank you for standing up to her, for not backing down. Jessica walked away before Sophia could respond. But she wasn't the only one. Over the next hour, a steady stream of people approached Sophia. Some to thank her, some to express solidarity, some just to introduce themselves, as if her confrontation with Eleanor had granted her some kind of legitimacy she'd lacked before. A young man who'd started a tech company at 19 and been mocked by old money for years. A woman who'd married into wealth and spent a decade being treated like a gold digger. A black entrepreneur who'd built an empire and still got stopped by security at these events. An immigrant who'd made billions, but whose accent still got him dismissed at parties. They'd all been where Sophia was, had all felt what she felt. Had all wanted to say what she'd said, but never found the courage or the moment. You made a lot of allies tonight, Margaretchen said, appearing beside Sophia as the crowd finally thinned. But you also made enemies. People like Eleanor. Don't forget, don't forgive. I know. Are you prepared for that? For what comes next? Are you asking as someone who's concerned or someone who's been through it? Margaret smiled sadly. But. I stood up to Eleanor once years ago when Marcus and I were first married. She made my life hell for those years. Froze me out of every social circle, spread rumors, made sure I was never invited to anything that mattered. It nearly destroyed my marriage. What changed? I stopped caring what she thought, stopped trying to fit into her world, found my own people, my own purpose. It took time, but eventually I realized her approval was worthless anyway. Do you regret standing up to her? Not for a second, but I wish someone had warned me how hard it would be. How lonely. Sophia looked around the ballroom. The gala was winding down now, people beginning to make their exits. The night that had seemed endless was finally approaching its conclusion. I appreciate the warning, she said. I mean it, Sophia. If you need anything, someone to talk to, someone who understands, call me. Marcus has my number. Or ask Dominic. Why are you being so kind to me? You don't know me. Because I was you once. Young, angry, tired of being invisible. I wish someone had been kind to me then. So, I'm being kind to you now. Pay it forward someday. Margaret squeezed her hand and walked away, leaving Sophia alone with her thoughts. The reporter from Society Weekly approached one more time, her notebook filled with scribbled observations. Last question, she said. If you could say one thing to everyone who's going to read about this tomorrow, what would it be? Sophia thought about it. About the girl she'd been 3 weeks ago, invisible and silent. About the woman she was becoming, visible and loud, about all the people who were still invisible, still waiting for permission to be seen, that you're already enough, she said finally. You don't need their approval to matter. You don't need to fit into their boxes to be valuable. And the system that tells you otherwise is broken, so break it back. The reporter smiled. That's a hell of a quote. You can use it. After she left, Sophia found herself alone for the first time all night. The ballroom was nearly empty now, just staff cleaning up and a few stragglers finishing final conversations. She walked to one of the tall windows overlooking the city, watched the lights below. Somewhere out there was her apartment, the community center, the university where she'd left her dreams on hold, the life she'd built out of necessity rather than choice. The motto, at life would still be there. The dishes would still need washing. The floors would still need cleaning. The bills would still need paying, but something had shifted tonight. Some fundamental understanding of who she was and what she was worth. She'd walked into this room expecting to be diminished and had walked out having diminished her diminishers instead. Ready to go, Dominic had appeared beside her, jacket slung over his shoulder, tie loosened. He looked tired but satisfied. Yeah, she said. I think I am. They walked toward the exit together, not touching, but moving in sync. At the door, Catherine Vandermeer was saying goodbye to the last few guests. She saw them coming and smiled. Leaving so soon, she asked Dominic. I think we've caused enough trouble for one night. Speak for yourself. He could watch Sophia verbally dismantle people for hours. Catherine turned to Sophia. I meant what I said earlier. You're going to be trouble, but the good kind. The kind that makes people uncomfortable enough to actually change. I wasn't trying to change anyone. I know that's what makes it effective. You weren't performing revolution. You were just refusing to perform at all. She handed Sophia a business card, my personal number. If you ever want to talk about actually leveraging this moment into something lasting, call me. I have resources, connections, and I'd like to help. Why? Because I'm old enough to recognize when the world needs shaking up, and I'm rich enough to enjoy watching it happen without worrying about the consequences. Sophia took the card, slipped it into her clutch alongside David Parks. The night was ending, but something else was beginning. She wasn't sure what yet. They walked out into the cool night air. Dominique's driver was waiting, but Sophia shook her head. You take a cab. Sophia, it's late. You need to think. You need to process this alone. It looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Okay, but text me when you get home. Let me know you're safe. I will. Aunt Sophia. He hesitated, searching for words. What you did tonight, what you said. I've never seen anything like that. You were incredible. He was honest. Something, apparently. A cab pulled up. Sophia started to get in, then paused. Dominique, thank you for bringing me tonight, for giving me the chance to be seen, even if it started as a joke. It stopped being a joke the moment you walked through that door. She smiled and got into the cab. As it pulled away, she looked back to see him still standing there, watching her leave. The drive home took 20 minutes. Sophia spent it staring out the window, replaying the night in fragments. Eleanor's face when Catherine told her to leave. Margaret's quiet support. The strangers who'd thanked her for saying what they couldn't. The reporter's questions. Catherine's card in her purse. The weight of what she'd done was starting to settle. By morning, she'd be in the news. People would have opinions. Her name would be attached to this story, this moment forever. She thought about calling it all off, asking David Park not to run the story, telling Catherine she'd changed her mind, going back to being invisible. But when the cab pulled up to her apartment building, when she climbed the stairs to her tiny one-bedroom with its peeling paint and narrow windows, when she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror, still wearing her mother's transformed dress, her face tired but alive, she knew she wouldn't take any of it back. She'd been seen tonight, really seen. Not as a housemaid or a charity case or a social experiment, but as herself, complicated and angry and honest and real. And she'd seen them, too. Had seen past the polish to the rot beneath. Had seen the emperor's new clothes for the naked power play they were. You couldn't unsee that. Couldn't go back to believing the lie once you'd named it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dominic. Home safe. She smiled and typed back. Home safe. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. More interesting than tonight. Different interesting. Trust me. She set down her phone and carefully removed the dress, hanging it in her closet with the same care she'd taken putting it on. Tomorrow she'd be Sofia Reyes, the infamous housemaid who crashed high society. But tonight, she was just Sofia Reyes, tired and exhilarated and more herself than she'd been in years. She fell asleep thinking about blue paint, about $2 million worth of meaning that she still didn't fully understand, about value and worth and the difference between the two. About what happened when you stopped waiting for permission to matter and just started mattering anyway. The morning light was too bright, too insistent. Sofia woke to her phone buzzing like an angry wasp on the nightstand. She reached for it, eyes still half closed, and saw 17 missed calls. 32 text messages. Her social media notifications had exceeded the app's ability to count them. She sat up, heart suddenly pounding. The first article she found was from the Metropolitan David Parks byline prominent at the top. Housemaid crashes elite gala exposes social rot. The photo accompanying it showed her standing in front of the blue Rothko looking directly at the camera with an expression she didn't remember making. She looked calm, defiant, like she knew exactly what she was doing. She scrolled through the article, seeing her own words quoted back at her. The part about loneliness, the part about performance, the confrontation with Eleanor rendered in stark black and white prose that made it sound even more brutal than it had felt in the moment. The comment section was a war zone. Half the people calling her a hero, the other half calling her everything from a gold digger to an attention seeker to worse things she didn't want to read before coffee. There were other articles, though. Society Weekly had gone with spring gala erupted in class warfare. A gossip blog called The Elite Report ran with Varela's maid declares war on high society. Even legitimate news outlets had picked it up framing it as a story about income inequality and social mobility. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Different number. She turned it off entirely. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, like the walls were closing in. She got up, made coffee with shaking hands, tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do now. Her work phone, the one the Varela household used to contact staff, started ringing. She stared at it for a long moment before answering. Sofia, it's Carmen. Don't come in today. What? Why? There are reporters outside the gates. At least a dozen. Saw me with cameras. The head housekeeper is losing her mind. Dominique told me to call you, tell you to stay home until this dies down. How long will that take? Carmen laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. Mia, you told off Eleanor Harrison in front of half the city's elite. This isn't dying down anytime soon. After she hung up, Sofia stood in her kitchen, coffee cooling in her hands, trying to process the shape her laugh had taken overnight. Yesterday, she'd been invisible. Today, she was infamous. The apartment buzzer rang. She ignored it. It rang again. Then her personal phone lit up with a text from a number she didn't recognize. It's David Park. I'm downstairs. We need to talk. She thought about ignoring him, though. But David had been fair last night. Had written the truth as she'd spoken it. She buzzed him up. It looked like he hadn't slept. His hair was disheveled. His shirt wrinkled. It was carrying 2 coffees in a bag from the bakery down the street. Peace offering, he said, holding them out. Also breakfast. You're probably going to need it. She let him in. The apartment looked even smaller with another person in it. She cleared space at her tiny kitchen table and they sat. So, he said, you've seen the coverage. So me of it. It's everywhere. The story went viral around 3 de la mañana. I've had calls from CNN, from The Times, from morning shows. Everyone wants to talk to you. You don't want to talk to anyone. I figured that's why I'm here. To give you a heads up about what's coming and maybe help you navigate it. Why would you help me? Because I like you. Because you said something true and now you're going to get crucified for it. And because I've seen this happen before. Someone becomes a symbol overnight and has no idea how to handle it. It usually ends badly. Sophia sipped the coffee he'd brought. It was good. Better than the stuff she made at home. What do you suggest? She asked. First, don't talk to anyone unless you trust them completely. Don't respond to comments online. Don't try to explain yourself or defend yourself. Anything you say right now will be twisted to fit whatever narrative people want to tell. What narrative is that? Depends who's telling it. To some people, you're a working-class hero standing up to entrenched power. To others, you're an ungrateful employee biting the hand that feeds you. To Eleanor Harrison's friends, you're a social climber who showed her true colors. Everyone is going to project their own story onto you. That's wonderful. It gets worse. Someone already dug up your academic records from St. Catherine's, found out you were on scholarship, left before graduating. There are think pieces being written about the student debt crisis, about women forced to choose between education and family. You read a case study now. Sophia felt sick. I didn't ask for any of this. No, but you walked into that gala and spoke truth to power. That has consequences. He was just tired of being invisible. Well, you're definitely not invisible anymore. He pulled out his notebook. Can I ask you something? Off the record, just for my understanding. Go ahead. What happens now with you and Dominic? It was the same question he'd asked last night. She still didn't have a good answer. I don't know. Yesterday I was his employee. Today I'm what? A new story. A liability. You're a person who stood up for herself. That's not a liability. Tell that to the people calling me a gold digger in the comments. Screw them. They don't know you. David leaned forward. But here's the thing, Sophia. You have a choice now. You can retreat. Go back to being invisible. What for this to blow over? Or you can own it. Use the platform you've accidentally created. Say something that matters. I already said what I wanted to say. Did you? Because from where I'm sitting, you just got started. Before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. Loud, insistent. Not the buzzer from downstairs. Someone was on her floor. At her actual door. David stood. You expecting anyone? No. He moved to the door, looked through the peephole, then turned back to her with raised eyebrows. It's Dominique Varela. Of course, it was. Sophia opened the door. Dominique stood in her narrow hallway, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit. His driver must be waiting downstairs, blocking traffic. He saw David and his expression tightened. Am I interrupting? David was just leaving, Sophia said. David gathered his things but paused at the door. Remember what I said. Don't engage. Don't explain. Just breathe. After he left, Dominic and Sophia stood in her small apartment, the silence heavy between them. You saw the coverage, he said finally. Everyone saw the coverage. Are you okay? I don't know yet. Ask me in a week. He moved to the window, looked out at the street below. There are 3 news vans parked at my house. My lawyer's phone has been ringing non-stop. The Vandermeer's PR team called to coordinate statements. This is bigger than I thought it would be. Did you think it would be anything? Honestly, I thought we'd make a minor splash. Eleanor would be annoyed and that would be it. He didn't think he'd turn to face her. I didn't think you'd actually challenge them. I definitely didn't think you'd win. He didn't win anything. You made Eleanor Harrison leave her own event. You got standing ovations from half the room. Catherine Vandermeer gave you her personal number. That's winning. Sophia sat on her second-hand couch, suddenly exhausted. It doesn't feel like winning. It feels like I broke something I don't know how to fix. Dominic sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. You didn't break it. You just exposed the cracks that were already there. That's not comforting. It's not supposed to be. It's just true. They sat in silence for a moment. Through the thin walls, Sophia could hear her neighbor's television, someone cooking breakfast, the normal sounds of a building full of people living their lives. It felt surreal that her laugh had exploded while everything else just continued. I need to ask you something, Dominic said. And I need you to be honest. Okay, do you regret it last night? Sophia thought about it, about the confrontation, the attention, the way her privacy had evaporated overnight. About the strangers who'd thanked her, the enemies she'd made, the platform David said she'd created. No, she said finally. I don't regret it, but I'm scared of what comes next. What are you scared of? That this is all I'll ever be now? The housemaid who crashed the gala. That story frozen in time that I'll spend the rest of my life being defined by one night instead of by what I actually do. So do something else, something bigger, like what? Finish your degree, work at the community center, build the life you actually want instead of the life that got forced on you. It paused. You don't have to keep working for me. You know, the literacy program is funded regardless. The contract doesn't require you to stay. Are you firing me? I'm giving you a choice. You can keep cleaning my house and pretending to be invisible, even though everyone in the city now knows your name. Or you can use this moment to actually change your life. It was a strange offer coming from someone who'd built his empire on control. Dominique Varela didn't give people choices. He made demands and expected compliance. What do you want? Sophia asked. I want you to be happy. I want you to finish what you started. Not last night, before that. Before you had to drop out. Before you had to choose between your mother and your future. Why do you care? Because watching you these past weeks reminded me that people can change. That we're not stuck in the roles we've been assigned. And if you can change, maybe I can, too. Her phone started ringing again. Then there was another knock at the door. The outside world wasn't going to leave them alone. "You should go," Dominic said, standing. "Let you figure things out." "What?" Sophia stood too. "What happens with us? Are we just done?" "I don't know." "What do you want to happen?" She didn't have an answer. 3 weeks ago, she'd been his invisible employee. 2 weeks ago, they'd made a deal. 1 week ago, she thought she understood what this was. Now, everything had changed, and she didn't know what they were to each other anymore. "I need time," she said, "to think, to process, to figure out who I am without being someone's employee or someone's scandal." "Take all the time you need." After he left, Sophia stood in her apartment, listening to the city outside. The phone kept ringing. The neighbors kept living their lives. The world kept turning. She thought about David's suggestion, about owning this moment instead of hiding from it, about what Catherine Vandermeer had said, leverage this into something lasting. She picked up her laptop and started writing, not for publication, just for herself, trying to make sense of what had happened, what it meant, where she went from here. The words came slowly at first, then faster. She wrote about invisibility and visibility, about the cost of speaking truth, about how easy it was to become a symbol and how hard it was to remain human underneath that weight. She wrote until her hands cramped and the sun shifted across her floor. Wrote until she'd processed enough to breathe again. Then she called Professor Martinez. "Sophia, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I will be. Can we meet? I want to talk about re-enrollment." The next few days were a blur. Sophia didn't leave her apartment, but the world came to her anyway. Interview requests piled up. Her social media following exploded. Someone started a crowdfunding campaign to send her to college that raised $20,000 before she even knew it existed. Carmen came by with food and updates from the mansion. The other staff didn't know what to make of Sophia's transformation. Some were proud, others felt betrayed, like she'd made their jobs harder by association. Maria had quit entirely, saying she couldn't work somewhere so public anymore. Dominic's different, Carmen said, unpacking groceries into Sophia's mostly empty fridge. Quieter, thoughtful. I've worked for that family for 20 years, and I've never seen him like this. Like what? Like he's actually considering who he is instead of just going through the motions. Margaret Chen called, invited Sophia to lunch when things calmed down. Used two women who'd both told Eleanor Harrison where to go. She said we should compare notes. Andrew van der Meer sent a text. My mother wasn't kidding about helping. When you're ready to talk, she's ready to listen. But the person Sophia kept thinking about was her mother. Wondering what she would have made of all this. Whether she'd be proud or horrified, whether she'd understand why Sophia had chosen visibility over safety. She found her mother's journal in the box where she'd stored her things. The entries were sparse, written in the careful handwriting Sophia had inherited. Most of them were practical, grocery lists, doctor's appointments, medication schedules. But near the end, there was an entry that stopped Sophia cold. I worry I've taught Sophia to be too small, to take up too little space, to survive instead of to live. I wanted to protect her from the world's cruelty, but maybe I just taught her to accept it instead. The date was those weeks before her mother died. Sophia sat on her floor, journal in her hands, and cried, not from grief, though that was there, but from understanding. Her mother had seen it, had known she was teaching survival instead of ambition, had worried about the cost. This was what her mother had wanted, for Sophia to be big instead of small, to take up space instead of apologizing for existing. By the end of the week, the media frenzy had started to die down. There were new scandals, new stories. Sophia's moment of infamy was being replaced by someone else's. She met with Professor Martinez and mapped out a plan to finish her degree. Night classes, online options, a thesis she could write while working. It would take those years, maybe 3. But it was possible. She contacted the 5th Street Community Center. The literacy program's funding had arrived. Dominique had been true to his word. They wanted her to help coordinate it, work with students, use her experience to build something meaningful. It wasn't glamorous. It paid less than housekeeping. But it mattered. She called Catherine Vandermeer. They met at a quiet cafe far from the social circuit. Catherine arrived in jeans and a sweater, looking more like someone's elegant grandmother than a social maven. You survived your first scandal, Catherine said, ordering tea. Congratulations. It didn't feel like surviving. It never does. But you're here. You're intact. And you haven't apologized. That counts. Your son said you wanted to help. What did you mean? Catherine stirred honey into her tea. I've been thinking about what you said about performance and empty charity. About writing checks without actually doing anything. It bothered me because you were right. I didn't mean bit. Yes, you did. And you should have. I've spent 40 years running charity galas and sitting on boards and writing checks. And I can't point to a single thing I've actually built. Can't name a single person I've personally helped. eBay funded programs, sure, but from a distance. Never getting my hands dirty. So, what do you want to do? I want to help you build something real. The literacy program, the community center. I want to contribute more than money. I want to show up, do the work, actually matter. Sophia studied her, looking for the angle, the hidden agenda. Found only genuine interest. Why? Because I'm 68 years old and I'm tired of being decorative. I want to be useful. And because you reminded me that power isn't about controlling other people. It's about creating opportunities for people to control their own lives. They talked for 2 hours about programs, funding, structure, about what the community actually needed versus what wealthy people thought they needed, about how to build something sustainable instead of something that looked good in press releases. By the end, they had the skeleton of a plan. Caterina would provide additional funding and open doors. Sofia would run the day-to-day operations and make sure the program served the people it was meant to serve. No photo ops unless the participants wanted them. No press releases celebrating Catherine's generosity. Used work. One more thing, Catherine said as they were leaving. Eleanor is planning a counter-narrative, positioning herself as the victim of your unprovoked attack, building support among her circle. So be care. Probably not, but be aware. She's dangerous when she feels threatened. Sofia walked home through the city thinking about Eleanor, about power, about what happened when you challenged systems designed to exclude you. She wasn't naive enough to think one confrontation had changed anything fundamental. The world was still unfair. Rich people still had advantages poor people didn't. One housemaid standing up at one gala wasn't a revolution, but it was a start. A crack in the facade. Proof that the invisible people were paying attention. Her apartment didn't feel as small when she got home. Or maybe she'd just gotten bigger. She texted Dominic. They hadn't spoken since he'd visited. The silence had felt necessary, like both of them needed space to figure out what they were without the roles they'd been playing. I'm re-enrolling at élite. Catherine's starting work at the community center, building something real. His response came quickly. Proud of you. Then a minute later, can we have dinner? Not as boss and employee, just as people. Sofia stared at the message for a long time. This was a crossroads. She could say no. Keep the distance. Let whatever had started between them die before it became complicated. It would be safer, cleaner. But she'd spent 2 years choosing safety over possibility. And look where that had gotten her. Okay, she tapped. But somewhere normal. No 5-star restaurants, no scene, just food and conversation. Y no a place. Tomorrow at 7. Tomorrow at 7. She set down her phone and looked around her apartment. At the boxes of her mother's things she still hadn't unpacked. At the book she'd kept from her college days. That the dress hanging in her closet, her mother's dress, transformed into something new. She thought about the girl who'd dropped out of school 2 years ago, the woman who'd spent yesterday cleaning other people's houses, the person she was becoming, caught between who she'd been and who she might be. The future was uncertain. Eleanor Harrison was plotting revenge. The media might turn on her. Re-enrollment would be hard. Working while studying. The community center job paid barely enough to live on. Dominic was complicated and dangerous and came with baggage she couldn't begin to understand. But for the first time in those years, Sofia felt like she was moving towards something instead of just surviving the present. Felt like her life belonged to her again instead of the circumstances beyond her control. She pulled out her mother's journal again, read that last entry one more time. Then she started writing her own entry. Not in her mother's journal. That felt sacred, complete. But in a new notebook she'd bought that morning. I don't know what happens next, she wrote. But I know I'm not small anymore. I know I take up space. I know I matter. Not because anyone gave me permission, but because I decided to. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't profound. But it was true. And truth, Sofia was learning, was the most powerful thing she had. The restaurant Dominic chose was a small Italian place in Sofia's neighborhood. The kind with checkered tablecloths and family photos on the walls. She almost walked past it twice, expecting something grander, something more fitting for a man who usually ate at places that required reservations weeks in advance. It was already there when she arrived, sitting at a corner table, wearing jeans and a plain shirt. She'd never seen him in jeans. It made him look younger, less intimidating, more like a person, and less like a symbol of power. You look surprised, he said as she sat down. I was expecting somewhere with a wine list longer than my thesis. I thought we agreed on normal. We did. I just didn't think you knew what normal was. He smiled at that, a real smile that reached his eyes. I'm learning. The waiter brought menus and water. Sofia ordered pasta because it was cheap and she was still thinking like someone who counted pennies. Dominique ordered the same thing, which somehow felt significant. So, he said after the waiter left, "You're really doing it. Going back to school. Classes start in 2 weeks. Night program, 3 classes to start. If I can handle the workload, I'll add more next semester." "What about work?" "The community center offered me a position, literacy program coordinator. It's not much money, but it's enough. And it matters." "It does matter." It paused. He talked to Carmen. "She said you submitted your resignation." "He did. 2 weeks notice like the contract requires. Though I figure I probably won't be welcome back at the house anyway after everything that happened." "You'd be welcome. The staff misses you. Even Maria, though she'll never admit it." "Maria quit. She came back. Said the new place was too quiet, too normal." Dominique traced patterns in the condensation on his water glass. "But I understand why you can't come back. It wouldn't make sense anymore. You're not that person." "What person?" "The invisible one. The one who cleaned my library and never spoke unless spoken to. That Sophia is gone." "Is that a bad thing?" "It's the best thing that could have happened to both of us." Their food arrived. They ate in comfortable silence for a while. The kind of silence that didn't need filling. Sophia watched Dominic navigate his pasta like a normal person, not like someone who usually had chefs preparing multiple courses. "Can I ask you something?" she said finally. "Anything." "What happened to you after the gala? You said you changed, but what does that actually mean?" Dominic set down his fork, considering. "I started paying attention to the people who work for me, to the businesses I run, to the impact I have. I always told myself I was doing good, creating jobs, supporting the economy, all the justifications rich people make, but I never actually looked at the cost, at who got hurt in the process. And now you're looking. Now I'm looking and I don't like what I see." It met her eyes. "He had a meeting with my business managers last week. Told them we're changing how we operate. Fair wages across all our holdings. Better working conditions. No more cutting corners to maximize profit." "How did they take that?" "About as well as Eleanor took you telling her the truth. Lot of resistance. Lot of concern about the bottom line. But I'm done optimizing for profit at the expense of people. That's going to cost you money. You have integrity is harder to recover once it's gone." Sophia studied him, looking for the angle, the performance. Found only exhaustion in something that looked like genuine regret. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked. "Because you asked and because I don't want there to be performance between us anymore. No roles, no pretending, just honesty." "That's terrifying." "Yeah," he agreed. "It really is." They finished eating and ordered coffee. The restaurant was filling up with the dinner crowd, couples on dates, families with young children, people living ordinary lives. Sophia realized this was the first time she and Dominic had been alone together outside his house or the gala. The first time they'd existed in the same space as equals instead of employer and employee. "What happens now?" Dominique asked. I mean it was the question she'd been avoiding thinking about. The one that didn't have an easy answer. "You don't know. A month ago, you were my boss. 3 weeks ago, we made a deal that was basically a transaction. 2 weeks ago, I was preparing to be your scandal. Now, we're sitting in a restaurant having coffee, and I have no idea what we are to each other. Does it have to be defined? Eventually, otherwise, we're just drifting and I'm done drifting." Dominique nodded slowly. "Fair enough. So, let me be clear about what I want. You want to see where this goes. Not because of obligation or guilt or any hangover from our previous relationship, but because I like who I am around you. Because you make me want to be better. Because when I think about the future, you're in it." Sophia's heart was doing complicated things in her chest. "That's a lot." "It is. And I know it's fast and probably messy and definitely complicated, but I'm tired of pretending I don't feel what I feel. What if I'm not ready? What if I need time to figure out who I am without being defined by someone else, boss, employee, girlfriend, whatever? Then we take time. We go slow. We figure it out as we go. I reached across the table, stopped just short of taking her hand. I'm not asking you to make a decision right now. I'm just asking you not to close the door. Sophia looked at his hand, almost touching hers. Talked about how easy it would be to reach the rest of the way. How complicated it would make everything. How terrifying and exhilarating and impossible to predict. Okay, she said. The door stays open, but I need you to understand something. I'm going back to school. I'm building a career. I'm creating a life that belongs to me. And whoever is part of that life needs to support that, not try to control it or shape it or make it fit their needs. You understand? Do you? Because say your whole life is about control, about shaping outcomes and managing situations. Can you actually let go of that? I don't know, he said honestly. But I want to try. For the first time in my life, I want to try being someone other than who I've always been. They left the restaurant and walked through Sophia's neighborhood. The streets were busy with evening foot traffic, people heading home from work or out for the night. No one looked at them twice. No cameras, no whispers, no performance required. Used two people walking. I got a call from Eleanor's lawyer, Dominic said as they walked. She's threatening to sue you for defamation. Can she do that? She can try. She won't win. Everything you said was either opinion or provably true, but she's going to make it difficult. Drag it out. Make it expensive. Hope you'll back down. I won't. I know. That's why I had my legal team draft a response. Basically told her that if she pursues this, we'll counter-sue for harassment and make public every questionable thing she's done in the past decade. She backed down within an hour. Sophia stopped walking. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She was trying to use the legal system to punish you for speaking. That's exactly the kind of abuse of power you called out at the gala. I wasn't going to let it stand. Thank you. You don't have to thank me for basic decency. In my experience, basic decency is pretty rare, especially from people with power. They reached Sophia's apartment building. The evening was cool, the city settling into its nighttime rhythm. Sophia knew she should go inside. Let the evening end before it became something she wasn't ready for. But she didn't want it to end yet. Want to come up, she asked. The apartment's small and kind of depressing, but I have wine. Cheap wine, but wine. They like that. They climbed the 3 flights to her floor. Sophia unlocked the door, suddenly self-conscious about the space. It looked even smaller than usual, even more worn. But Dominic didn't seem to notice or care. He took off his shoes at the door without being asked, settled onto her second-hand couch like he belonged there. She poured wine into mismatched glasses, and sat beside him, leaving careful space between them. This is nice, he said. Nice. It's a shoebox. It's yours that makes it nice. They talked for hours about everything and nothing. About Dominic's childhood growing up with a father who saw people as assets to be leveraged. About Sophia's mother who'd sacrificed everything so her daughter could have opportunities she never had. About books they'd read, places they wanted to go, futures they'd imagined before life had gotten in the way. Somewhere around midnight, Sophia fell asleep on his shoulder. She woke a few hours later to find him still there, still awake, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. You should have woken me, she said, sitting up. You look peaceful. He didn't want to disturb that. What time is it? Almost 3. You should go home, get some sleep. Probably, but he didn't move. Can I tell you something? Always. Ebe never done this before. Sat on someone's couch in the middle of the night just talking. Never fallen asleep with someone without it being about sex or strategy or some agenda I was working. This is new for me. I love it. It's new for me, though. Different new, but still. Are you scared? Sophia thought about it, terrified, but in a good way. Like standing at the edge of something and not knowing if you're going to fall or flat. What if we fall? Then we fall. At least we'll have tried. Dominique left just before dawn, slipping out quietly while Sophia dozed. When she woke properly a few hours later, there was a note on her kitchen table in his handwriting. Thank you for last night, for the honesty and the cheap wine and the possibility. Whatever happens next, I'm grateful for this. Sophia made coffee and read the note 3 times, trying to understand what she was feeling. It wasn't love, not yet. But it was something real, something with potential, something that scared her almost as much as it excited her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Catherine Vandermeer. Community center meeting tomorrow at 2 de la tarde. Be there. We have work to do. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Sophia started her classes at St. Catherine's, settling back into academic life, like putting on old clothes that still fit. The work was hard. Her brain rusty from 2 years of disuse, but it felt good to think deeply again, to analyze and question and create instead of just surviving. The community center consumed her days. With Catherine's funding and connections, they'd expanded the literacy program faster than Sophia had thought possible. They hired 3 new teachers, doubled the class offerings, added a computer lab for digital literacy. Sophia coordinated everything, working with students who reminded her of herself, people who'd fallen through cracks, who'd been told they didn't matter, who were hungry for a second chance. She saw Dominic regularly but carefully. Coffee once a week, dinner every other week, occasional texts in between. They were learning each other slowly, peeling back layers of performance to find the real people underneath. It wasn't always easy. They fought sometimes about his need for control, about her stubborn independence, about how to navigate a relationship built on such unequal foundations. But they kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing honesty over comfort. 3 months after the gala, David Park published a follow-up piece. Where is Sophia Reyes now? It tracked her re-enrollment, her work at the community center, the quiet revolution she was building away from the spotlight. The article was fair, soulful, treating her like a person instead of a symbol. The response was overwhelming. Donations poured into the community center. Other literacy programs reached out for advice. Universities contacted her about speaking opportunities. Sophia turned most of it down, wanting to focus on the work instead of the publicity. But she said yes to a few things. A panel discussion about educational access, a workshop on advocacy for working-class students. She was building something. Not fame or influence or power in the traditional sense, but impact, legacy, proof that one person speaking truth could create ripples that extended far beyond a single moment. Eleanor Harrison's attempted lawsuit had fizzled out exactly as Dominic predicted. But the damage to Eleanor's reputation had been real. People started paying attention to her charity work, questioning where the money actually went. Several organizations quietly removed her from their boards. She'd tried to destroy Sophia and had destroyed herself instead. Sophia felt bad about that for approximately 5 minutes. Then she remembered Eleanor's casual cruelty, her weaponized politeness, her complete lack of self-awareness. So many people needed to fall before they could learn to see others as human. Margaret Chen became an unexpected friend. They met for lunch monthly, trading stories about their respective battles with high society. Margaret had gone back to school, though, pursuing a degree in social work at 43. Eleanor did me a favor, Margaret said over Thai food one afternoon. Watching you stand up to her made me realize I could, though. That I'd been playing her game for so long I'd forgotten I could just stop playing. Hopes Marcus handling it. Confused, but supportive. I think he's relieved. Honestly, he never liked that world either. He just thought we had to participate to succeed. Turns out we didn't. 6 months after the gala, Sophia defended her first thesis chapter in front of her advisory committee. Professor Martinez smiled throughout the presentation, clearly proud. The other professors asked sharp questions, pushed her thinking, made her defend every claim. It was exhilarating and exhausting. When she finished, Professor Martinez pulled her aside. That was excellent work, Sofia. Truly excellent. You've grown as a scholar in ways I didn't expect. Thank you. You had good teaching before I left. Yours took me a while to get back to it. The time away changed you, made you stronger. You're writing with authority now with lived experience backing up your theoretical framework. It's powerful. Sofia thought about that on the bus ride home. About how suffering could become wisdom if you let it. About how breaking could lead to rebuilding stronger than before. Dominique was waiting at her apartment when she arrived, sitting on the steps with takeout from her favorite Vietnamese place. Congratulations on the thesis defense, he said, standing. Carmen told me it was today. Thought you might want to celebrate. How did Carmen know? You put it on the kitchen calendar at the house before you left. She took a photo. Wanted to remember to light a candle for you. Sofia felt tears break her eyes. Carmen lighting candles for her academic success. The staff she'd thought barely noticed her tracking her milestones. He missed them sometimes, she admitted. The house, the routines. Even though I'm happier now, I miss the simplicity of it. You can visit. They love to see you. Carmen asked about you constantly. They ate on her apartment floor, the small table too cluttered with books and papers to clear. Dominique looked comfortable there now, settled into her small space like he belonged. I have something to tell you, he said after they'd finished eating. Sofia's stomach clenched. Those words never led anywhere good. I'm selling the business, he continued. Well, not all of it, but the parts that required moral compromises I'm not willing to make anymore. The real estate holdings that displaced low-income families. The construction contracts that exploited workers. The legitimate front for less legitimate activities. That's most of your empire. I know, but I'd rather have less money and be able to look at myself in the mirror. It paused. I'm scared. I've been this person for so long. I don't know who I am without it. But I want to find out. What will you do instead? I'm not sure yet. Caterina's been talking to me about funding community development projects. Actually building things that help people instead of just extracting wealth. It sounds naive when I say it out loud, but I think I want to try. Sofia reached across and took his hand. It's not naive. It's growth. It's terrifying is what it is. Welcome to the club. We have t-shirts. He laughed and the tension broke. They cleaned up dinner and settled on the couch. Sofia's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. It felt easy now, natural. The careful distance they'd maintained had gradually closed until they fit together without thinking about it. Can I stay? He asked. Just asleep, nothing else. I just don't want to be alone tonight. Yeah, you can stay. They fell asleep on her couch, too tired to move to the bedroom. Sofia woke once in the middle of the night to find Dominic still there, his breathing steady, his face peaceful. This man who'd started as her employer, who tried to use her as a joke, who'd accidentally helped her find herself again. Life was strange, full of unexpected turns and unlikely redemptions. A year after the gala, the community center held an open house to celebrate the literacy program's expansion. Sofia had invited everyone who'd been part of the journey, students, teachers, donors. Caterina van der Meer showed up with a check for another year of funding. Margaret and Marcus Chen came with their teenage daughter. David Park brought a photographer from the Metropolitan to cover the event properly, not as gossip, but as real news about community impact. And Dominic came quietly, staying in the background, helping set up chairs and arrange food. No cameras on him, no attention, just work. The students gave presentations about what the program had meant to them. A 50-year-old woman who'd learned to read and was now helping her grandchildren with homework. A young man who'd gotten his GED and was starting community college. A single mother who'd learned English and found better work. Sofia watched them share their stories and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Breathe. Not in herself, though she'd worked hard, but in what they'd built together. In the proof that people could change, that systems could shift, that power could be used to build instead of control. After the presentations, as people mingled and ate, Professor Martinez pulled Sofia aside. "I have news. The university wants to offer you a position after you graduate. Teaching assistant first, then instructor if it works out. It's not much money, but it's a start." Sofia's eyes widened. "Are you serious?" "Completely. Your work has been exceptional. Your perspective is exactly what our department needs. And frankly, the students would benefit from having someone who understands that education isn't just theoretical, that it's survival and hope and transformation." "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. You don't have to decide now, but the offer is real." Sofia found Dominic later helping wash dishes in the community center's small kitchen. "You're doing dishes," she observed. "Dominique Varela is doing dishes. I'm learning valuable life skills. Don't mock me." She laughed and grabbed a towel, drying while he washed. They worked in comfortable silence until the dishes were done and the kitchen clean. "The university offered me a job," she said. "Teaching position after I graduate. That's incredible. Are you going to take it?" "I don't know. It's everything I wanted before I had to drop out. But I'm not the same person who wanted that anymore. I'm not sure if teaching is where I'm supposed to be or if this," she gestured at the community center around them, "is where I belong. Why can't it be both? Can it? Why not? Teach part-time, work here part-time, build the life you want instead of choosing from predetermined options." Sofia leaned against the counter, considering she'd spent so long thinking in terms of either-or, either education or survival. Either visibility or safety, either this path or that one. But maybe life didn't require those binary choices. Maybe she could build something more complex, more true to who she actually was. "You're right," she said. "I can do both. I'm occasionally right. Don't get used to it." The open house wound down. People left in groups, still talking, still energized. Sofia and Dominic walked home together through the city streets. The late spring air warm and promising. "I'd been thinking," Dominic said as they walked. "About us, about where this is going." Sofia's heart rate picked up. "Okay, we've been taking it slow, being careful, making sure we're not rushing into something for the wrong reasons. And that's been good, important, but I don't want to be careful anymore. I don't want to hedge my bets or protect myself from possible hurt. I want to actually be with you fully. No more testing the water, just diving in." Sofia stopped walking. They were on her street now, halfway between the community center and her apartment. The streetlights cast long shadows, the city quiet around them. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I love you. I'm saying I want to build a life with you. Not because of guilt or obligation or some redemption narrative, but because you're the best person I know, and I don't want to waste any more time pretending I'm not completely in love with you." The words hung in the air between them. Sofia felt like she should say something, anything, but her brain had short-circuited somewhere around "I love you." "You don't have to say it back," Dominic continued, talking faster now, nervous. "I know that's a lot and we're still figuring things out and you're building your own life and I don't want to pressure you." Or Sofia kissed him mid-ramble, mid-anxiety spiral. Just reached up and kissed him like she'd been wanting to for months but had been too careful to act on. When they pulled apart, he looked dazed. "What was that for?" he asked. "Because I love you, though, you idiot. I've loved you since you showed up at my apartment at dawn with terrible coffee and actual concern. Maybe even before that, but I was too scared to admit it. You're not scared anymore." "I'm terrified, but I'm done letting fear make my decisions." They stood on the sidewalk holding each other while the city moved around them. Two people who'd started in completely different worlds, who'd found each other through chaos and confrontation, who'd chosen each other every day since. "So what now?" Dominique asked. "Now we keep building. I finish my degree. You transform your business. We work at the community center. We figure out what love looks like when it's not based on power dynamics or performance or anything except actually choosing each other." "That sounds complicated." "It definitely will be, but also worth it. They walked the rest of the way to Sophia's apartment, hand in hand, climbed the stairs to her third floor, woke up, settled onto her couch like they'd done dozens of times before, but different now, more certain, more real. I need to tell you something, Sophia said, about the future. Okay. I'm never going to be the kind of person who fits easily into your world. I'm always going to be too loud, too direct, too unwilling to play the game. If that's going to be a problem, it's not a problem. It's why I love you. Let me finish. I'm also never going to stop calling out injustice when I see it. Never going to stay quiet to keep the peace. Never going to choose comfort over what's right. And that means I'm probably going to make enemies. Going to make your life more complicated. Going to Sophia. It took her hands, made her look at him. I know who you are. I've been known since the gala. Before that, even you're the woman who negotiated a literacy program instead of accepting a free dress. Who walked into a room full of people who wanted her to fail and succeeded anyway. Who stands up for people who can't stand up for themselves. That's who I fell in love with. I'm not asking you to change that. What are you asking? To let me stand beside you. To let me be someone who builds instead of someone who controls. To help me become someone worthy of being loved by you. Sophia felt tears on her face. Happy tears. Overwhelmed tears. Tears for the girl she'd been who'd never imagined this could be her life. Tears for her mother who'd wanted this for her even when Sophia couldn't see it. Tears for the future she was building. One choice at a time. Okay, she whispered. Yes. To all of it. 2 years after the gala, Sophia graduated from St. Catherine's University with honors. Her thesis on power dynamics in Victorian literature was selected for publication in an academic journal. Professor Martinez cried at the defense. Catherine Vandermeer attended the ceremony, sitting with Carmen and the other mansion staff who'd become Sophia's unexpected family. Dominique was there, though, in the audience. No cameras or performance, just pride and love and presence. After the ceremony, they gathered at the community center for a celebration. The literacy program had expanded to 3 locations now, serving hundreds of students. Sophia taught 2 classes at the university and coordinated the community center programs, splitting her time between theory and practice, between thinking and doing. Dominique had sold most of his questionable holdings and reinvested in community development. A and Catherine had partnered on several projects. Affordable housing that actually served low-income families, job training programs, small business loans for people the banks ignored. A still made money, but now he slept better at night. Margaret Chen had gotten her social work degree and opened a practice serving immigrant families. Marcus had become her biggest supporter, using his business connections to fund her work. They'd renewed their vows last month, standing in front of friends and family and choosing each other again, but differently this time. Eleanor Harrison had disappeared from the social scene entirely. Rumors said she'd moved to the West Coast, started over somewhere. Her name didn't carry the weight of scandal. Sophia hoped she'd found peace. Hoped she'd learned something. The party at the community center went late into the night. Students shared updates on their lives. Teachers talked about curriculum. Donors mingled with the people they were helping, the barriers between them lower than they'd ever been. Near midnight, Sophia and Dominic slipped out to the roof of the building. The city spread out below them, lights twinkling, alive and complicated and full of possibility. You know what I was thinking about? Dominique said, looking out at the view. What? That dinner those years ago when I agreed to bring you to the gala. I thought I knew exactly how it would go. You'd be uncomfortable. Eleanor would be smug. I'd win some petty social victory. Everything neat and contained. That's not what happened. No. You destroyed my plan completely. Turned the whole thing into something I never expected. Sorry. Don't be. You turning my life upside down was the best thing that ever happened to me. He turned to face her, pulling something from his pocket. A small box. Sophia's heart started racing. I know we said we'd take things slow, Dominic continued. And we have 2 years of slow, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be careful. I want to build a life with you officially, publicly forever. I opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, with a single stone that caught the city lights. It's not the biggest diamond, he said. Not the most expensive, but it belonged to my grandmother, the only person in my family who ever stood up to my father, who taught me that power could be used for good if you were brave enough. She would have loved you. Sofia's vision blurred with tears. Dominique Sofia Maria Reyes, will you marry me? She looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the city below them, thought about the journey that had brought them here. From invisible housemaid to visible presence, from employer and employee to equals. From a joke that wasn't funny to something real and true and worth everything. Yes, she said. Yes, absolutely yes. He slipped the ring onto her finger and they stood on the roof holding each other, laughing and crying at the same time. The city hummed below them, indifferent to their joy, but providing the backdrop anyway. They went back inside to find the party still going. Catherine saw the ring first, let out a whoop of joy that stopped all conversation. Carmen cried and hugged Sofia so hard she couldn't breathe. The students clapped and cheered. David Park, who'd become a friend over the years, raised his glass and toast. To Sofia and Dominic, he said, who taught us all that power isn't about control. It's about what you build with it. Everyone drank to that. Later, after the party ended and they'd cleaned up and said goodbye to everyone, Sofia and Dominic walked back to the apartment they'd moved into together 6 months ago. It was bigger than her old place, smaller than his mansion, somewhere in between, like their relationship. They settled on the couch, exhausted and happy. Sofia looked at the ring on her finger, still not quite believing it was real. What are you thinking? Dominic asked. That I wish my mother could have seen this, could have known how things turned out. I think she knew. I think she knew you'd find your way. Sofia thought about her mother's journal entry. About teaching survival versus teaching ambition. About the worry that she'd made Sofia too small. She'd be proud, Dominic said softly. Of who you've become, of what you've built, of everything. Yeah, she would. They sat in comfortable silence, planning futures and dreaming dreams. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Inside, two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way chose each other again, as they would every day for the rest of their lives. The story that had started as a joke, as humiliation, as one powerful man's boredom and one invisible woman's desperate bargain had become something neither of them could have predicted. It had become real. It had become love. It had become proof that people could change, that systems could shift, that power could be redefined. Not through force or control, but through choosing to see each other. Through refusing to accept invisibility as inevitable, through standing up and speaking truth and building something better than what came before. Sofia Reyes had walked into that gala expecting to be diminished, and had walked out having changed the world. Not the whole world maybe, but her corner of it. The part she could reach, the people she could help. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. She fell asleep on Dominic's shoulder, the ring heavy on her finger, her heart light in her chest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new work, new chances to make a difference. But tonight, she was exactly where she belonged.